Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Agatha All Along show review, and I'm super excited to talk about this amazing show. And I brought along a friend to discuss all the things about this amazing show. So I want to introduce everyone to a friend, Carrie, cosplay by Kay.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm very excited.
Yes. I cannot wait to hear all your thoughts and feelings about this.
I'm excited to talk about them. I haven't there's only been so many people I've been able to talk to about the show. So many people I know are very behind. So this is exciting.
Yeah. And thank you again for coming on and discussing it with me.
Yeah, of course. What's better than getting to talk about the witch show?
All right, so quickly before we dive into all the episodes, I was just curious. I know a lot of people were introduced to Agatha when WandaVision came out, but I was just curious when you were first introduced to Agatha.
Oh, it was WandaVision.
Yeah.
I'm not really a big comic book reader, so I knew nothing. So I had been reading recaps of each episode, and they had been talking about Agnes and how she's probably this witch, Agatha Harkness, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but I love a witch, so
Mhm.
okay. And it's Catherine Hahn, who I love, so um, what could be bad? And then as
Mhm.
the episodes go on, and she's just incredible the entire show while she's being Agnes and the nosy neighbor and all of it, and then the song dropped, and then it's like, oh, she is the witch. And
Mhm.
then everything that happens in episode 8 and episode 9 of WandaVision, I was just like, yep, I'm sold. Like, she's for me. Let's go.
It really was the perfect casting, in my opinion, for her.
Mhm.
Like for me personally, I had kind of an idea who Agatha was before because I read comics, and so I knew a little bit about her character before and her relation to Scarlet Witch and witchcraft and all that. So um, when she first appeared in WandaVision, I was like, I had a suspicion, and then when we finally found out that it was Agatha, I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. So guessing we should dive into it.
Yeah, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
All right. So I mean, just looking at my notes here, I just kind of like I was just writing like everything
Yeah.
almost.
No,
So
let's just, what do you got? What do you got?
um so at first I wasn't really sure how this show would go about, like after WandaVision, how that ended. And so we find Agatha as Agnes, living as a detective under Wanda's spell that she put on her 3 years ago, which I've honestly found it was a very interesting choice of career.
Well, it seems like she was only a detective for a few days, I think, because
Yeah.
that was the whole that she had just been recently bitten with the true crime bug.
Hmm.
So who knows what she was doing before that? We need a whole other show to show us these 3 years in Westview while
Yeah.
she's under this spell.
Right. And they come across a dead body in the woods, and she, against the captain's orders, because she was put on probation or whatever, and she technically was not supposed to be there, and she showed up anyway. And like she finds all this evidence, and it seems like all this evidence points towards the body being Wanda, but they don't actually show it.
They don't. It's not her show anymore.
Nope. So, and we see that she finds the brooch. I don't know if it was the same brooch that she had in WandaVision.
So there's been a little bit of discourse about this in my threads on threads. It's a different brooch visually. I think it's supposed to be the same brooch. Like I think they're trying to just say that it's the same brooch.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't read confirmation on that. It's just what's being assumed, but the brooches are two completely different designs. When
Okay.
you're from like, comparing from the two shows, like they are different,
Mm-hmm.
but I think
Okay.
it's supposed to be the same.
So like feel free to add anything if you want. I really did like the title sequence though. That was really cool.
Yeah,
For the first episode.
Just having all of their like Westview names popping up, or the under the hex names popping up, and Mrs. Hart, that gave me a chuckle.
And like that version of the Witch's Road ballad.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool.
Yeah.
So like after she finds this brooch, she like definitely doesn't show her partner what she found, and she goes to the library and well, she finds they find evidence of that library card, and then that leads her to the library to see what kind of book was checked out, and that book turned out to be the Darkhold, and
sure did.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that was a moment.
Like it was a big moment for us as the audience and as her character. And she realizes that it's the Darkhold, and she's like, "Whoa!"
She doesn't even finish writing that word.
Nope. And it's kind of funny how Rio seems to show up like right after that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's been talk about that too, because so at the beginning I had a theory that maybe Teen and Rio were working together because they both showed up at the same time to get her out of the spell. And I was like, that's really weird that they would just show up at the same time. Obviously, that was not the case. Any theory I had was wrong, which is great because I don't want to be right. I don't want to know what's going on. I want to be surprised. And in the end, generally I was. And I would say the reasons that I wasn't was because of the internet, but nothing that I, came up with on my own. But yeah, the Rio and Teen showing up at the same time still is. It is kind of a coincidence, isn't it?
It is.
I'm trying to think back, like, oh, was there anything that happened that would have caused both of them to show up at the same time? I don't know. I can't think at this point, but.
I mean, it's not until later on in the show that we find Teen and what he was up to, like before he shows up at Agatha's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then ironically, they're both there at the same time. But I also did see a lot of theories on the internet about it, and I was like, I don't know what to believe, because
you can't believe anything because they don't know. They're just as clueless as the rest of us, but they're trying to piece this, that, and the other thing together, and it's like, oh well, this sounds really good, or this sounds really good, and I'm sending things to people. I'm like, well, this sounds great. Is it true? And then obviously, like, none of it was. So, well, something.
Yeah, and it's like I saw like when So when she gets back to her house and we see her walk into her son's room, which we later find out more about,
Mhm.
Nicholas Scratch, and it like no one at that point really knows how like why he's in there or anything like that. But then we later find out what happens.
Mhm.
Um, so um, it's it's really a mystery, and like that's one of the things that intrigued me the most about this show, and like it in its entirety, it's like I'll be honest, at first, the show wasn't something I was really all that excited about, but it definitely changed my mind really fast.
Good, I'm glad.
So, so yeah, not long after she goes back to her house, the Rio shows up at her door and just casually talking about the case, but really she's like, "Do you remember why you hate me?"
Mhm. See, I'm this whole thing, the whole part where she's still under the spell. I'm, wondering what actually was happening, which of course we find out some of from teen slash Billy's perspective, but
Mhm.
um I still am questioning, like, okay, was Rio there? Which we can get into later, but I need a show just about that. Or an episode just about that. I don't know.
Yeah, and it was when things started really getting weird is when Agatha was interrogating Teen
Mhm.
after he broke into her house, and she ended up catching him thanks to Mrs. Hart by hitting him with her
Just
car.
conveniently hitting him with the car, it's fine.
Um, so like, and the first thing that was really like weird is when she was showing him pictures of the dead body, and he was like, that's just pictures of flowers. Like, what are you trying to say to me or get from me?"
Right. It's like, lady, what are you doing?
What are you talking about?
Like, they're lovely photos, I guess, but there's not a body there.
Mm-mm. And then the painting on the wall where the interrogation mirror thing
Mhm.
was.
It's like pure chills. When he says,
Uh-huh.
like, "Why do you keep looking at that painting?" I was like, and then
Huh?
like full body chills. That I think that was the first moment in the show that between the flower photos and the why are you looking at that painting or why do you keep looking at that painting, um, that I was like like actually spooked and I had the
Yeah.
chills and I was like, okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah. And then he starts saying the spell that ultimately breaks Agatha out of Wanda's spell.
Hmm.
So, I'm sorry, I'm just reading through my notes.
Oh, you're totally good.
Um, so so after that, Agatha goes to the morgue, and my opinion, this is one of the best parts of this episode,
Hmm.
when that scene in the morgue when she walks in, there's nothing there, but then there's the body on the table, and she's like 5'7", green eyes, hair the color of scarlet.
Hmm.
Like
Like more
that's
chills. Like you saying it now is like giving me the chills.
yeah, and like I mean, it gave me chills just hearing her say that and then seeing the body, and we don't really see her face, so it's
The hair. And I
yeah,
was like,
it's
what
just a strand of
is
hair.
she doing?
And then the library book card attached to her foot, and her name shows up, Wanda Maximoff, as the last entry, last person to have the Darkhold. But there are several other dates above that where other people had possession. But we know that Wanda was the last. So And then she did that thing in Multiverse of Madness and destroyed all of them.
Yes, she did.
So, and then just out of nowhere, Rio shows up again.
As she does.
Yes.
It's fine.
And like even when she first showed up in Agatha's office, I had a feeling that she was some type of witch or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't really put my finger on it. But then we later find out who she really is, which we'll get into. But she's like, Rio tells Agatha Scarlet Witch is dead and all the copies of Darkhold are gone. And then she's like, basically trying to make Agatha remember who she is, and she ultimately does. And like how they did that scene was so good.
Mm-hmm. I know.
She just starts taking off all her clothes and trying to literally break out of the spell that Wanda put her under, which was how they did it was just really good.
Yeah, it was very cool. There's been a lot of postings about them filming that, and I think they did it in one day or something. It was just very cool bringing all those old costumes back and just going backwards through the decades.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point she remembers who she is, and like how they like how then she just like wakes up in her house like
she is not happy. She is not a happy witch.
And then that whole scene with her neighbor, like
I watch it and I just think it's still so funny. It's so funny. The two of them together are just like, I would watch them banter for hours if I could. And just even when he puts the jacket on her shoulders and she immediately just like whips it off, like it's like a child almost. Like it was so well done. It was so funny. And then her like screaming at all the other neighbors while she's just standing there completely naked. Like,
yep,
it's fine.
Yeah, it's no big deal.
What are you gonna do?
Also another thing, I really like how they brought back all the WandaVision neighbors, like the Westview people.
Yeah.
That were in WandaVision. Yes. That was a neat touch.
I enjoy them a lot. Mm-hmm.
All right, so at that point she goes back into her house in her basement where her runes were. The rabbit is still there, Senior Scratchy.
He sure is. He's so fluffy.
I know. So cute. And then she proceeds to find Teen is locked up in her closet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was the jail that she put him in.
Yeah. Then also the Rio shows up again, but in a completely different outfit.
With like a completely different demeanor.
Yes.
Like she's not coming over with pizza and beer. She's knocking the door down. Or
literally.
The door down.
She's like, I guess like, I can't be killed, and tries to tell her not to fight her because she doesn't have her full powers. Like, you'll get so much more out of this fight if I had my powers.
Yes, basically. She needed to get her purple back.
Mm-hmm. But then they end it on the fact that Rio told Agatha that the Salem 7 were coming for her, and like pretty much the next episode is where we are introduced to them, and they're terrifying.
Yeah, when we get to that scene, we'll talk about it. Because I was like, wait, this is actually very spooky, very creepy.
But then another thing Rio says is, she's like, my heart is black and it beats for you. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they were a thing.
They sure were.
It's like, that's interesting. So, were there any other thoughts about the first episode that you had?
Episode. Oh, well, one thing that was somebody pointed out early on, having to do with the everything that was happening at the police station and the morgue, and the crime scene, like, wasn't actually happening, was when Agatha or Agnes goes into her office at the beginning, and she was talking to the chief, and she's doing whatever. In the background, there was a picture of a young boy and a bunny, I think. And then at some point, it turns into like a plant and a bunny, maybe. So
Oh.
people noticed that the background kept changing. And it's like, well, because she's in her house, we're assuming. Because then later on, when the chief comes back and he tells her to go home, and she's like, I am home, chief. And it was like, okay, like, you're taking it as like she works and like she lives at work, but in
Mm-hmm.
that sense it's like, oh, but now you know, like, she actually was home. But was the chief, was he actually there? Was she in his house? It was just kind of like a lot of like, is he like, you need to leave my house now because you're in my house and I don't know why. Who knows? This is why we need a show about it, but it's
Yeah.
fine.
I,
So
I,
yeah, that was just a fun thing.
yeah, I didn't notice that.
Yeah,
Mm.
people are very good on picking up on things like that, looking in the background, especially when you watch it like multiple times.
Yeah.
There was one thing. Oh, there was the comment where she gets home, and she's walking into the house, and you hear a dog barking, and she goes, "Stupid dog," and that made me just thinking back to Sparky.
Oh, Sparky.
Oh, R.I.P. See if I wrote anything that was interesting that we haven't found out any answers to. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I think we kind of touched on everything.
Yeah. Well, actually, is it Agatha or the chief that mentions the car accident at the beginning?
At the very beginning.
Because they said there was an accident that happened not far from
Yeah, I think
Westview.
it was her partner at that point.
Okay.
I think. And I want to say it was probably him, although I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she brings it up to Rio, obviously, when they're in the house. So,
which later we found out
it's important. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Which I feel like in a show like this, because I don't want to say so few episodes because it is one of the longer Marvel shows, but because it is only 9 episodes, you kind of got to figure anything that they put in there has some sort of relevance to what's going on. So it's like, if you're bringing up the car accident and you've brought it up now multiple times, you have to figure, okay, this is going to come back somehow. Don't really know how. Don't know the details, obviously, but it probably means something.
Mm-hmm.
And so it did.
Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I like Marvel so much, is like they like most of the time have a good way of like following through with like little breadcrumbs that they throw in there and like intertwining the stories together. And
yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I thought, reading the Jack Schaefer interviews, is when she's kind of saying, oh, well, Marvel told me to say this, or Marvel said I have to do this, or, just the certain things that needed to be in there, because obviously they're going to keep growing whichever characters make it out. And any storylines, it's like they want to have little seeds planted already. And so that is very, I love when things are planned like that, because it makes me have confidence in these people that are making these projects, that they know what they're doing. They know what should be in there, what maybe shouldn't be in there, and how to just keep it moving.
Yep, exactly. So with that, we get into episode 2, which is another thing is all the episode titles are lyrics in the ballad. I find that really cool.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's kind of fitting, like with this episode titles, Circle Stone and with Fate, Unlock Thy Hidden Gate, and that's pretty much foreshadowing them opening the road.
Yep.
Right. We have some people in the chat. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Gary. So basically the first thing that Teen asks Agatha to do is take him to the Witch's Road, and like before, when she was interrogating him, she was asked him, why did you break into my house? And he was like, oh, I'm after the road. You should know what it is. You of all people should know. But that was basically him trying to break her out of the spell, which she does. And she was pretty impressed with him, like after she found out that he broke it. But he says that what he's after is power, but we later find that it's not entirely true. And the weird thing that happens with Teen, which we later find out why, is the sigil that was put on him, the spell that prevented him from saying his name, like his actual name. And even Agatha is like really confused by it.
Yeah, she's like, very intrigued.
She was like, what?
Yeah. I just have one thing to say about when he first brings up the Witch's Road to her, and she tells him that the Witch's Road doesn't exist, and he says, you're lying, and she says, am I? This kind of back and forth between them happens a few other times throughout the show, and I think every time she's telling the truth. I think she's telling the truth every time. But because we know that she's a liar and he keeps calling her a liar, when you're watching the show before you know, you're like, is she lying? Is she telling the truth? But her response in that moment, the way she said, am I? It doesn't seem like she's lying. But again, like, who's to know until we find out? But and then she says, because I rewatched this part today after rewatching the finale, she says, when he's saying, I want to go to the Witch's Road, and she says, it will kill you. Because obviously, with what we found out, everybody that tries to go to the Witch's Road ends up dead. So she was being honest. She was not lying. But she also didn't want him to go. She didn't want to take him there. And then she changed her mind.
I mean,
well, maybe not necessarily, actually. No, she didn't change her mind. I take that back. She takes him to go find the coven, and then as we get to the end of the episode, she banishes him from the basement. She doesn't want him involved. So I changed my mind.
I mean, looking back at that episode now, and after watching the last 2 episodes again, I don't think she had any intention of hurting him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have like banished him from the basement because I don't think she wanted him to see what she was going to do originally.
Yeah. She has that soft spot for those young boys.
Mm-hmm. And I totally agree, Gary. The season was tied up really well, but we want more. We want more.
We want so much more. I will watch 1,000 seasons of this show, or if however else they're doing it, if movies, etc. I will watch it forever. I trust Jack Schaefer.
Like if it'll be nice if they like at least do like one more season, if not more, like with the director.
I mean, they had a lot of directors working on this show. I don't know how many they had, but they had quite a few. But yeah, there's just so many things that can be shown, even if it's just for fun, like the 3 years that they were, while she was under the spell, just
right.
And you don't have to show like 3 seasons worth of stuff, but just in terms of, a short 6-episode thing about the day to day and what she was doing, and the neighbors being like, "Is she okay? Does somebody want to bring her groceries this week? Like, whose turn is it?" Like that, and just all of that, and then obviously, which we can talk about later, the Rio of it all. We need more, more of that. So, yeah,
I agree. All right, so Agatha basically tells Teen that we need a coven in order to open the road. So the first witch they go to is Lilia, and she's a divination witch. She does readings for people, and of course she's like, no, I don't want any part of this. Just go. Leave me alone.
The road is a death wish. She knew.
And she knew Agatha's reputation as well, so she saw all the signs. And but like the part that I thought was interesting was when they were in her kitchen and the lights were flickering and like she just started screaming like, ah.
Yep.
I was like, whoa, what's happening?
Exactly. And then she gets a list.
Yeah,
the list is still a little because obviously it listed Lilia, it listed Jen, it listed Alice, and then it listed a black heart. And that is very confusing because obviously there was the comment that Rio had made earlier about having a black heart.
Yeah.
There's also the going back to WandaVision with it was in black and white at that point, but the black heart on the calendar because that was when they were having dinner with Mr. and Mrs. Hart.
Right.
And so that throws Mrs. Hart into the ring. And then later on, there's an earring that a certain teenage boy is wearing that is also a black heart. So it's like, who is the black heart supposed to be?
Yeah, just that whole scene just again it gave me chills.
Yeah, it was a lot. And Patti LuPone is like perfection.
Oh yeah, she was amazing. So she's like her fear is Agatha stealing her magic from her, and then Agatha just casually tells her like, only way I can steal it is if you shoot me or with your power. And it's really interesting that she openly told her about that, because that was ultimately like part of her like plan.
Right. I mean, a lot of people have been speculating about that too, and some people are saying, "Oh, well, at that point, she didn't think that Lilia was either going to be part of the coven or because if she's saying no, why is she telling her?" But then if she's telling her, it's kind of like giving Lilia like the inside scoop. So now maybe Lilia trusts her a little more. I don't know. But then, of course, when the list comes out and Lilia's on the list, oh well.
Well, but ultimately she agrees, and she shows up later at Agatha's house. And then after they leave there, the next name on the list is Jennifer, and she's the Witch of Potions, or High Priestess, as Lilia called her later.
Mm-hmm.
And she's also like, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And another thing that intrigued me was her bringing up the fact, well, she asked about Teen and why he was there. And she was like, oh, is this another child sacrifice? Like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, what?
Yeah.
Then they basically blackmail her into joining the coven
Sure do.
because
She's got some legal troubles.
uh-huh, and she's legally and magically bound.
Mm-hmm.
So she ultimately also agrees to join the coven.
Yep.
And then the next witch is Alice, or the Blood Witch, as Agatha calls her, since her mother was a witch also. And I gotta say, after watching the last two episodes, Alice was right, because she said the road is a myth.
Mm-hmm. Well, she also probably knew because since her mother wrote the most famous version of the ballad, I guess if her mother had never walked the road,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think people are now like, did Agatha kill Lorna Wu? Because um, the fact that Alice then says like she like died on the road, like on tour, but I feel like we would have known about that, or we would have found out about that.
Yeah, I mean that is an interesting theory. I mean, who knows?
Right, like if she had tried to actually walk the road. But if Lorna knew there's nothing, then obviously
Yeah.
she's telling her daughter that this road does not exist.
Mm-hmm. So ultimately Agatha convinces Alice to join because so she can find out what happened to her mom, and get closure for that. And and then on the way back to Agatha's house, she asks Teen like where he's from, which I which is another part I found really interesting, and it ties to the sigil that's on
Mhm.
him. So he starts to explain where he's from, and it's kind of like lowered, like the volume's lowered and like garbled, and like you see Agatha like snapping her fingers and turning the music up,
Mhm.
and
She's like, what is going
what?
on?
Yes,
Like, am I going deaf?
yeah,
Like, no, ma'am, you're not.
nope,
Oh, and one thing that happens throughout this episode too is that and I think the first animal we see, I believe, is after Lilia's, where she sees the crow. And
mm,
so that is, the start of the Salem 7
yeah,
coming, and they're getting closer, and she knows they're getting closer. she's running out of time.
Yeah, and then the rat in the mall.
In the mall, and then the coyote out on the
Mhm.
street during the costume twirl.
Yep. So they get back to her house, and all of them show up, and I forget who says it, but they're like, "We need a green witch to successfully complete the trials."
Right.
And I mean, Teen asks her like, who's next on the list, and she just
It's
hilariously shoves the paper in her mouth. She's like, "Nope, nope."
Mhm.
So it's hard to say whether she really knew who it was referring to, or if she just
Or if she assumed that it was Rio. I don't know. I don't know.
it's hard to say. But either way, so she decides to go invite Mrs. Hart into the coven,
Mhm.
and she lies and says that it's a party, and she's like, "Oh, okay."
Yep.
And poor Mrs. Davis is sucked into the coven.
She is, but at least she's having a good time while she's doing it.
Yeah, she's like, "Am I supposed to know this song?"
Oh
And
my
like
gosh.
while
No,
they
literally living her best life that during that scene when they're
uh-huh.
all singing and she's just like, oh my
Oh,
god.
but so like, and it's kind of like funny that, well, not funny, but fitting that as they're singing the ballad, the Salem Seven show up, and like all this crazy stuff starts happening
They are
upstairs.
so creepy. It's like it was a combination of obviously the costume design and then the like choreographed, I don't remember like how much of it is editing and how much of it is them whatever the choreography of just what they were doing and the music and
Mhm.
Ian's reaction and just all of it. I was like, this is creepy. And then I think there was John out on the street. Did he drop his groceries or something?
Yeah.
I just, I just, it was so well done. It was so well done.
It was. And he also said, like, are you seeing this too? I
Yeah.
was like, I would have been in my house already.
I know. I would have just, no.
Ran.
Goodbye.
And the like he went back in the house, and like I think it was the couch that he put in front of the door because the door wasn't there anymore.
Like, I don't think that's going
Like,
to stop them, but good thought.
yeah. And so eventually they get it, and like basically like a jump scare for him and for me. Honestly, it
Yeah.
scared me.
Yeah. See, that part was in the trailer. So this is why I stopped watching the trailers. Because at first I was like, I have to keep watching these trailers. I need as much of this as I can get like into my body. I just need to see everything. And then as the show started and just kept going, I was like, okay, well now I don't want to see anything. Now I just want to be surprised. But that
Yeah.
part was in the trailer. So I knew when he was like sitting in that chair that it was gonna happen. So I didn't get
Yeah.
freaked out. But I can understand if you did, if you hadn't seen that.
Yeah. Um. So yeah. After they invade the house, they're still singing the ballad at that point, and then they finish, and she starts playing her con with them,
Which we don't
saying,
know at
"Oh, is
the
there any
time.
real witches here? Like where's the door?" And starts what's the word?
berating
basically
them.
blaming them for
Hmm.
not being powerful enough, or
And then they start going back in on her, and Catherine's acting in that scene is just like, I mean, she's incredible generally, like all the time. But in that
agree.
one scene, you're just like watching her as she's just like toying with them, and it was perfect.
Uh-huh. And then just out of nowhere, the door actually appears, and like
And Teen comes running down the stairs.
yeah, yep, just
Yeah.
the right time.
Mm.
And like at first I didn't even make that connection, and it wasn't until later that we find like how that actually happened,
Right.
which we'll get to. But yeah, Teen comes running down the stairs like terrified out of his mind.
He's like, we gotta
And
go.
yeah, I would too.
I would too.
So they open the door, and they all escape through it, and like it's not long after she closes it, it like seals, like
Mhm.
it's no longer there, and then they actually see the winding road,
Mhm. Very
and
reminiscent of the yellow brick road.
uh-huh,
Mhm.
which I found that a very nice touch, honestly.
Mhm. And then the shoes come off,
Uh-huh, and
and
they
Agatha's final line of the episode, I never doubted us for a second. Okay, girl. Sure.
yep. Oh, yeah.
Maybe it was I didn't doubt us for a second. It's didn't or never. They mean the same thing.
Basically, yeah.
So then, yeah,
So
that's the end of Act 2. Act 2.
yeah, on to 3,
Mm.
which is the first trial.
Mm-hmm. The wine,
And the what?
the wine trial.
Oh, yeah. Mhm. And it's and we find that it's actually related to Jen. It's Jen's trial,
Mm-hmm.
since she's the potion witch, and um so I think it's Lilia that says this. She says that the trials are their worst fears on the road, and it will test each of them in the craft.
Does Lilia say that? I think Agatha might say that. Doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Um, but yeah, wait, there was something I was gonna say. Oh. So when they're walking up to the house, and I think Sharon might say, like, what if this is the end or something? And then Teen goes, that would be a bummer. And then Agatha like looks at him, and she like hangs on this look at him for like a few beats, and then they like continue on. But I always
Mhm.
thought that was an interesting little moment.
Hmm. Yeah. But like before they get to the house, though, like Sharon's like freaking out, like
Oh yeah.
because she wasn't supposed to be there,
No, she thinks she's
really.
kidnapped.
Yeah. She's like, I want to go back home, and like I shouldn't be here. And she steps off the road, which is one of the rules of things not to do. And she
Mm-hmm.
almost gets sucked into the ground.
Mm-hmm. The ground almost takes her Talbot's bag.
Uh-huh.
That's not great.
And like, but when they like finally get to the house, the beach house, it's like the design on the door was pretty cool, I
Mm-hmm.
thought.
Well, the moon phases.
Mm-hmm. And then like how they like walk through the door and they just appear in like different clothes and everything. I was like, that's so cool.
And then what I noticed, maybe the second time I watched it, as soon as it's determined that their clothes have changed, Agatha very frantically starts looking for her brooch. And she finds it on
Yeah.
her lapel over here, and she like keeps her hand like over it for a while, like just like calming herself down that she still has it. She was very,
Yeah.
very worried for that moment that it was the clothes changed and now where did it go?
Yeah.
So with that, I was like, ooh.
I mean, we found out in the first episode that it has a strand of hair in it, which and so obviously it means a lot to her for obvious reasons. So yeah, it's completely understandable how like frantic she would be looking for it and like wanting to like keep it close to her
and make sure it's just that it's there.
And so not long after they go into the house, like all the doors, like they lost the doorknob disappears, so they couldn't leave.
Nope.
And then the windows were locked, so they were really stuck in that house.
You will drink this wine,
Yep.
or you will die. It's basically what the trial was.
Yeah. And I didn't write down the riddle, but it was really like.
Oh, I have it.
Oh, okay.
Because I love that moment. I loved that moment too.
Like
my age
figuring out.
Yeah. My age has value. I'm no fun alone. I mess with your mind. My tricks are well known. Like, ooh. And then Agatha says, sounds like a witch. And then Jen says, sounds like you.
And then they determined that it was the wine, and then it just magically appears, and and then the timer starts on the fireplace.
I think it started when oh my gosh, when Sharon took when she started drinking it, I think then it started. That was like off to the races.
Yep.
And so they obviously are all, she's pouring all the glasses of wine, and then Teen comes over and asks if he can have some, and everyone's like, no. And Agatha's like, you bet. You know.
So Jen kind of pulls Teen aside and like tells him to be careful around Agatha, and like it like as far as like who like what happened to her son, it just kind of really got the ball rolling, like as far as like theories go for me anyway. Because she tells them that Agatha supposedly traded her child Nicholas Scratch for the Darkhold, or no one knows what happened to him, if he's dead or alive, or if he's a demon or an agent of Mephisto. We got Mephisto name drop there.
Name drop. Yep. And of course the internet went. Yep.
Yep.
As expected. As they expected.
Mm-hmm.
They played right into our hands, or we played right into their hands.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were speculating Mephisto to show up in WandaVision.
Yeah.
And like it would have made more sense for him to show up in this show than WandaVision, but that's just what I believe. But anyway, so yeah, that moment really got me thinking and theorizing. So so they all start drinking the wine except Agatha. She's like, I'm not so sure about this. So she just kind of walks around and like
Tries to leave.
casually pours it into the plant, and
Mhm.
she's like, "I'm not drinking this."
Mm-mm.
And then all of a sudden, Sharon's face swells up, and then everyone's face except Agatha's
Who is then
swells up.
hiding in the side.
Yeah. And then they find out, um, or Jen realizes that they've been poisoned, and she determines that it's a toxin and that she needs to create a potion to save them. And then they find out that Agatha never drank the wine, and they're like, "You need to do it. You need to drink it."
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that was a little crazy was when the wine just started like
Refilling it.
filling back up.
Mm-hmm. And well, after she chucks the one glass on the ground,
Mhm.
and then I'm not really sure the order of events, but when Teen volunteers that he'll drink it, and Agatha says no, and she like pulls him away basically,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh,
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, that's really when you start to realize that maybe she really does care about him in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh,
I mean, knowing now who he is and knowing, that they have a bit of a past,
hmm,
it does obviously like make you watch
yeah,
it a different way. And you're like, wait, they already have like kind of a bond. So,
hmm,
it's also continuing that.
hmm. Um, so in order to create this potion, they split up in the house to gather all the supplies that Jen needs to create it. And since they were all poisoned, one of the side effects was hallucinations, as Jen said. And so Alice, Lilia, and Jen all have pretty vivid hallucinations.
Hmm. They sure do. And this is after Lilia has one of her little, I forget what they call it. They had a name for them, where she basically says something really random.
Mhm.
And I think she says, like, we have to save Agatha or something. And then Agatha looks at her and she's like, yeah, I like that plan, but we need whatever the actual
Mhm.
lines are. But yeah, I think that happens right before that, right? Anyway.
Yeah, it was when they were starting to go down that hallway, and that's when Lilia sees
Right.
the young girl, and
Hmm.
which
Is
we
her.
later find out who she is.
Hmm.
And she proceeds to follow her down the hallway, and she sees a hooded figure with like the face looks like a skull, and like that part alone just gave me chills again. I
Hmm.
was like, oh. And then I mean, obviously that freaked her out a lot, and she started saying something in a different language, and pretty sure it was like she can't be dead or something like that. And
When she gets back to the hallway, or
yeah.
because then she's saying because her maestra was there with the hooded figure, and when she comes back, she says something like, "They're all dead,"
Yeah, yeah,
and
that's
she
what I
in
meant.
Italian. And after she like runs into Agatha, and that's when Agatha has that moment that it was I guess the first time that we saw her in this show have that, I don't want to say vulnerability, but that moment where she like put aside her performative normal self that she always puts out to the world, and she was just kind of there to like tell Lilia like it was okay. And it was just like, sorry. And it was just like, what just happened? Like Agatha, what? It was just so, I don't even know what word to use, but it was almost comforting that she didn't start, saying whatever she would have said to Lilia after she's having a freak out.
Yeah, it was kind of a nice thing to see coming from Agatha. It was like kind of comforting Lilia like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, "Aw." And then we see, I forgot which one was first, but Alice ends up seeing her mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was like a sauna room or something.
It did seem like a sauna, which is weird, but
well, regardless,
well, I think it was also because of the fire situation.
Yeah.
Because the fire, yeah.
But she sees her mom, and I'm sure that was hard enough for her to begin with because her mom is dead, and she's told Alice her grandmother died today, or something about her grandmother.
Yeah, that she died today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then she, obviously traumatized by that, Teen pulls her out and proceeds to get the supplies they need. And then we see Jen she saw a doctor. I think he was
a doctor. Yep.
Yeah. And like that whole scene just was like chilling.
Yes, as he proceeds to try to drown her.
Yes.
Didn't love that.
Mm-mm. So then after that, everyone comes back into the kitchen, and everything is, you can tell like the whole like atmosphere is just darker.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of shows the window, and it's like the whole house is underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, and earlier, when Agatha was trying to get out of the house, she broke the window. So the glass was still broken, and the time was still winding down. So they're like, okay, we need to do something now before we all drown.
Exactly.
So then Jen starts adding all the elements in the kitchen sink to create the potion, and she's like, they need to be in a certain order, certain way. And so then it goes to Agatha, and she starts hearing this baby crying, and that starts her hallucination. So we see a crib, and she pulls back the blanket, and it shows the Darkhold, and that really freaked her out.
Mm-hmm. More incredible acting.
Yes.
From Catherine Hahn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that scene is like that. Just like that moment is, it's haunting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's haunted, even though what she's haunted by specifically with this show has nothing to do with the Darkhold, aside from them being rumors. But
yeah,
just the reaction that she has it's heartbreaking.
It is. Like, and I mean, you're right. Us as an audience and everyone else in the coven assumes that she gave up her son for the Darkhold,
mm-hmm.
which later we find out what really happened. But like, just that scene by itself, it was just really sad because it seemed like she really did care about her son a lot and loved him, and
Yeah.
so
People were saying after that aired, they were like, does this look like the woman, a woman who would have like voluntarily given up her child? Like the way that she was reacting,
mhm.
because it is because of her reaction, of what her reaction is. You're just kind of like, if she did do that, something very, very bad must have happened for her to do that. Not that she did it willingly. Like she would have
Right.
never just voluntarily given over her son for that book.
Yeah, I agree. It was like regardless of what was happening, it's still just heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so another ingredient they needed for the potion was a strand of each of their hair, which Jen thought that would be the last thing, but they realized they needed the blood of the unpoisoned. So Agatha cuts Teen's hand and just um, drops his blood in there, and then it turns blue, which was the right color. They all drink it, well, except for Mrs. Hart because she's like unconscious
She's a
at that point.
disposed.
So
But
after
then,
they do that,
yeah, no,
what?
continue.
Sorry. So at that point, the timer runs out, and all the water starts coming in the house.
But they do try to give Mrs. Hart some of the potion, like
Yes.
right as the timer's running out.
Yes,
Yes.
they do. But still, it doesn't stop the water from coming
No,
in the house,
it's not.
unfortunately. So they have to carry her through the oven door that opens just because that's their way out.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of chuckled at Lilia's comment about her friend being
Yep.
in the oven door. I'm like,
I love when they do stuff like that.
mm-hmm. So as everyone is trying to get out, it's funny that when they go through the oven door, it turns into a slide, and they're just like back onto the road. And unfortunately, Sharon didn't make it through, so she ends up dead.
And we end with "Who's Sharon?"
Yeah.
which is one of my favorite lines from the show. And then we are immediately pushed into Heads Will Roll, which is an incredible song. And I was definitely not expecting them to be using, I was expecting Agatha's theme for the credits as usual. And we did not get that. We got Heads Will Roll, which made me very happy.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that that I thought it was cool. Their song choices for the end credits.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Oh, one thing we did not talk about. When Alice and Teen are talking, and he's bringing up her tattoo and how she got the protection, like for protection, and they bring up she said like the whole thing about being 13 years old, and Teen says, "Oh, a lot happened to me when I was 13," and that was another moment where people were like, I think we know.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just another one of those moments. Let me write something down.
Yeah, I thought that I wrote that down. I guess I missed that. So, yeah,
oh,
thanks for
I
bringing
just
that up.
because I wrote a thing about that with Colorado because New Salem was in Colorado, and that's with the comics with Agatha. It's a whole thing. Have I read them? No, but I read about them. But I did at the beginning of this episode. I did write who put the sigil on Teen? Wanda ? Agatha ? Other ? Because people were talking about Wanda with something that she said to the boys in, I guess, WandaVision. I don't remember if it came up again in Multiverse of Madness. And they were like, what if that was the sigil? I was like, I don't know. So at that point, that was another theory.
Yeah. Because actually they do find out that a sigil was put on Teen because the other witches start asking him like questions like who is he? Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
So yeah, that the mystery deepens on who Teen really is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're into episode 4 now, which honestly is one of my favorite episodes.
Same.
For
episode 4 was the first episode. So I had watched the other ones, like after I watched them the nights that they aired.
mm-hmm.
I didn't watch them again that night. I watched them again a few days later. Episode 4 was the first episode that as soon as it ended, I just stared at the TV and I was like, I have to watch that again immediately. And I did.
Yeah. I don't blame you. It was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole show was just amazing, but like episode 4 was definitely one of my favorite episodes.
There's a lot that happens in episode 4.
Oh gosh, yeah. And like again, the episode title, If I Can't Reach You, Let My Song Teach You.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because that line is only in the Ballad of the Witch's Road, Lorna's version.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's not part of the other one.
Mm-mm.
So obviously this is Alice's trial, the fire trial. And Alice claims that her mom died on tour in a hotel fire and she needs the road to save her. And Jen says they still need a green witch. So Agatha comes up with this idea of summoning a green witch to the road. And funny enough, it's Rio that they summon.
Yep, sure is. And she's not happy about it.
Nope. Agatha's like, ugh.
Literally, yes.
Like it had to be her. And then the others are very curious about her. And she's like, I'm the green witch.
Yeah, she's not a green witch. She's the green witch.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
And she says it in a very menacing way too. Like,
mm-hmm.
I'm like, whoa.
Yep.
And they're all like, should we trust her? Like, what?
Yeah, like who is this?
Who is this person?
She seems very confident in herself.
Uh-huh. So at that point they stumble upon the second trial and Alice takes one look at the building and she's like, nope, I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. She tries to walk away and it just appears in front of her again. And she's like, oh, okay. And it's the fire phase of the moon and they all go through the door and they appear in the 70s retro clothes. And I was like, yes, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
in what appears to be like a music recording studio, um and Alice is like, don't touch anything, don't mess with anything.
Like anything. It was very Alice in Wonderland. Like, okay, Alice,
Yeah.
it's your Wonderland, and you're telling us not to get bigger or smaller.
Mm-hmm. So they all just kind of like walk around for a few minutes and like search for clues about it, and they show all these pictures of witches, which kind of, I guess, are iterations of themselves,
Yeah.
or at least that's what I got from it.
Mm-hmm. And there's just like
And
a lot of
then
things on the walls too that I was like, I feel like I need to pause this to look at each thing, because they're not just going to put, things that don't really mean anything on the wall.
right. And then we also see some demon masks on the wall and albums. Like I caught a glimpse of Fleetwood Mac, which I really
Mm-hmm.
love them. And then Alice sees a picture of her mom, of course. And then that's another moment where Lilia says another random thing.
Yes.
To
Am I wispy?
Alice.
Well, she does the am I wispy or am I kooky? Or kooky and wispy come first. And I think she says something else too. And I can't remember what it is. Because the reason I remember which is it? Am I wispy or am I kooky? That line is that because Patty, she does the same eyes that she did during the interview that they had before the show aired, like back in the summer, where she's like, and it's a musical, and her eyes get all like bug-eyed kind of, and it's like the same thing in that episode. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be just like seared into my brain now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then we get to Rio and Agatha talking in the recording booth.
Oh, wait, before we get to that, there's a moment between the two of them when they're at the mirror and everybody else has walked away, and Rio says, boo. And Agatha turns around and she's like looking at her, and she like shakes her head and she says, no. And in that moment, you're kind of like, what are they referring to? Are they referring to like don't start with me about this? Are like, we're not getting into this?
Mm-hmm.
And then having watched more, is it about teen? It's kind of just like, what is she saying no to?
Right.
And is she saying no, like, you can't have him? Like, again, at that time, you don't know a lot of other information. So there was that. And then we leave them there. And then we get into what you were just going to say.
Yeah. So when they're in there, Agatha asks for a truce, and Rio's like, I'm losing my patience here. Like, you need to give me something. Mm-hmm. So Agatha just subtly presses the intercom button while talking to her, and just at the right moment where Rio is talking about Agatha wanting to kill all the witches around her, and Rio will get her buddies, as she said, which at the time I didn't really think about what she meant by that, but later but what?
By the bodies?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, at this point, I hate to be this person. At this point, like, I had already been spoiled on who Rio was.
Oh.
I had been spoiled on who Rio was and who Untine was because of that Funko. Yeah. So it was like confirmed. But anyway, so yeah. So at that point, I knew who she was, and I know a lot of other people did too. But I'm happy that you didn't, because that's good that you got to watch this, like, having no idea of like what that really meant.
Yeah, I'm sorry you got spoiled for it. It's
okay.
I hate it when that happens.
So do I. So do I.
So anyway, they Teen ends up finding like a record that says "Play Me," but when he played it, it played backwards. So like all this crazy stuff happened when he started playing it, and like they broke the record player to stop it, and um they ultimately find out that they were cursed, and the timer starts ticking,
Mm.
and all of a sudden Lilia just starts burning, like her the skin on her shoulder starts burning, and Alice draws the circle around her, breaking the curse, and ultimately realizes that they had to face the curse in order to end it. And they also find that something evil, which is basically the curse, it's flying around them in the room and invisible on top of that.
Right.
So they couldn't
And,
see it. They just could hear it like in the room.
and that
And
was
they
after
realized,
it left Alice, because before it starts attacking everybody else, she starts going like this, and she's like, I feel lighter, because the curse has like lifted itself off of her, even though we can't see it, she can't see it. And
yeah.
then now that's why it's now burning into everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately she's the one that brought the curse there.
Mm-hmm.
So start attacking everyone else, unfortunately. And so then comes to one of my favorite parts of the whole show. They play the Ballad of the Witch's Road,
Mm-hmm.
and I gotta say, since I heard that song, it's been stuck in my head for weeks.
Because it's so good.
Yes, it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
They sound
Like
incredible.
I cannot get it out of my head, and it's
As
just
you shouldn't. It should be in your head forever. Like, it
yes.
lives there now. Sorry.
Hmm. Like it's so good. And so as they were playing it, the curse is still in there, flying around, and um, like that moment where Teen looks down and realizes that he was like impaled by, looks like what, glass or something. I couldn't tell what it was.
Because it happens so randomly that
Yeah,
all of a sudden there's like glass sticking out of him, and you're just like,
yeah.
what?
What happened?
But this was after he flew across the room before they
Yeah,
started playing the song, in
that's
which
right.
we see Agatha be the first one to run towards the room, the
Hmm.
sound booth or whatever. But then she stops. Like, as soon as she gets in there, she stops, like at the desk table thing, while the others like run past her to him. And
Yeah,
it's like, that's like another one of those moments.
right.
Hmm.
So they continue playing the song, and they realize that Alice's mom wanted to save her, so she wrote the ballad to protect her. Basically, a protection spell to keep Alice safe from the generational curse
Right.
that was on the women in their family. And Alice ends up seeing the curse, or the demon. It appears as they're playing the song, and they it tries to get her, but they finish the song and it just like incinerates and is destroyed.
Hmm.
So that ends up completing the trial for them, and the piano opens to for their way out. But as they're doing that, Teen ends up passing out and just they carry him out, and that was another moment where Agatha seemed really, really worried about him, and she's,
Mhm.
like, almost, like, freaking out a little bit, like,
Like, yeah.
mm,
And then that moment happens where I forget what Lilia says. Lilia says something to Agatha, and she yells at her, and when they're outside, and he's like laying on the trunk
mhm,
of the
mhm,
tree, and she yells at Lilia and says, "Don't." And then she looks over at Rio, and her entire demeanor changes, and she says, "Don't," at her
mhm,
in that like pleading, begging, like, "Don't take
yeah,
him away." And
yeah,
like,
don't mhm,
oh my God, I was just like wrecked, like watching that. It was
yeah.
awful.
I was like, "Please don't let this kid die." Like,
Yeah.
I would've bawled if oh gosh.
Hmm.
And so, Jen creates the, healing potion to save him. So, thankfully, he he's alive, and it's kinda sweet that, Agatha just kinda sits there by him, just, like, watching over him, like, as
Hmm.
he was, resting. I was like,
I think she
"Aw."
had put her coat on him, I
Mhm,
believe. Um, and yeah, she's just watching,
mhm,
making sure he's gonna wake up.
right. Which is also, like, kind of heartbreaking in a way after watching the last episode,
Mhm.
which we'll get to later, but, uh, Teen wakes up and asks Agatha if she's the one who cast the sigil on him, and she said she wouldn't know because it works on the witch who casted it as well, and sigils can't be lifted, they're destroyed when they're no longer needed.
Mhm.
And then he proceeds to ask her, like, what happened to her son, and she just kind of walks away, like,
Her demeanor changes again, and she
"Mhm,
goes back into that performative Agatha thing that she does.
yep,
She puts up the walls, and the conversation is over, and she leaves.
yep."
Oh, and
So
yeah, so now we're going back to the conversation that the other coven members are having.
mhm, sharing their, battle scars, as they called them.
Mm-hmm.
So, we actually get a, Daughters of Liberty reference in there,
Hmm. Yes.
which is, a group in the comics in Marvel Comics that's composed of various, women in the Marvel universe, which I found really, funny that they put that reference in there. But, but yeah, it was, really kind of a nice, like, bonding moment they all have, like, sharing all their stories that even though it was about their battle scars, but still, it was nice to see them, like, kind of bonding and talking like that.
Hmm.
And so, when someone asks Rio what her scar is, and she basically says that is when she had to do something to someone that she loved, and she didn't want to, and she said, "She is my scar."
Yep. Devastating.
I know. And Agatha the look on Agatha's face, like, as she was saying it was,
Hmm.
oh,
The whole back and forth, the way that they filmed it between the two of them was just like so perfect. Ugh. And then she makes an excuse to get up that she has to go stretch her legs, and she walks away.
mhm.
And then, of course, Rio has to go after her.
They, hug each other, and like, in that moment, like, "Are they gonna kiss or are they
Mhm.
not?" They almost do. And then Brio tells Agatha that the boy isn't yours, which is another like clue as to who Teen is.
Well, see, okay. So when that happened, there was also a lot of like discussion about like what does that sentence mean? Because like the words are so specific. Like she didn't say he's not your son. She just said that boy isn't yours. So because at that point people were like, is it Nick? Like, is it Billy? Like, who is it? Who is it? So that was kind of like very questionable at that moment. And then after we find out about Teen, then it was kind of like, okay, well, then she's saying like that boy isn't yours. Still could mean multiple things though. Could mean it's not your son, he's not your son, or like he's not yours, he's mine, which makes more sense once you know who she is.
Right.
And then yeah, so you're just kind of like in that moment there's so much kind of confusion because you're like, what does she mean? And then Agatha's demeanor changes again, and she goes from being like potentially like forgiving her to, oh, now you've woken the beast, and she's gonna smile at you with that smile that she does, and she's gonna just walk away.
Yep. Exactly.
And then the episode ended, and then I was like, what do you mean that's the end of the episode? And that's when I was like, I have to watch this again immediately. Ugh.
Totally get that. I would have rewatched it too, but it was really late when I watched it. So, like, I need to somehow go to sleep after that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the weeks I was up very late. Because some weeks I couldn't watch it till later, but then there were nights that I was just up. It was like 2 a.m. and I'm like talking to people about this. I'm like, why am I need to go to work tomorrow. Why?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, what are you going to do?
I mean, back when one of my favorite shows was airing, I would stay up late to watch it, even though I had school and stuff to do the next day. I'm like, yeah. I'm watching it.
I get it. I mean, I've never done this with any other television show, but I get it now.
Mm-hmm. So, the next episode, Darkest Hour, Wake Thy Power.
Mm-hmm. Yep, this one. The shortest episode at the time. I don't remember if episode 7 was short or not, but I think this one is the shortest.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Yeah. This episode was a lot.
It was. So it starts off with the Salem 7 showing up on the road somehow in the forms of different animals, as we saw in the second episode when they started to come. So I think someone asks who the Salem 7 are, and then
yeah, because they're different from the comic books.
They are. They're in the comics. They're actually, for those out there who don't know, they're actually Nicholas Scratch's children. So technically, they're Agatha's grandchildren.
Spooky.
Yeah. But their origin in this show is when Agatha killed her coven. Originally, she spared their children, so they formed a coven bent on revenge. It's pretty much how they formed. So, it was really funny. When Agatha first shows up in this episode, she's like, "Okay, we need to go.
Like, everybody, pack up your shit.
Let's get out of here."
Mm-hmm.
And like the fact that they used the wood as brooms, those flying brooms to escape them. It's like, that's great.
That whole sequence was really cool. Just the discussion of it, and like teens suggesting it and them being like, what? No, we're not doing this. To then them doing it, to then them actually doing it. Like that was and then the landing portion of it, like that was, it was all very, very cool sequence.
Like, I'm curious to know how they shot that, like how they filmed that.
Well, I mean, I know because I've seen the pictures of them each like individually on the brooms, and then there was a video that Allian shared, I think, of her, the part where the brooms tilt over, like they have her on like a circular thing, and then in front of a green screen or blue screen, whatever, and then they just tilt her over like as the thing was, as things were going, and it was just, yeah. So I think they did each one individually and then spliced it together. Yeah.
Add them all together. And so where they land is where the next trial is, and it's Blood Moon that Lilia says it is, and it's ultimately Agatha's trial because she can communicate with the dead, and they end up using a Ouija board. So, and again, when they walk through the door, they're dressed in different clothes, and it's like a big sleepover, basically.
It sure is.
Very crazy sleepover with that. And so teen reads the rules for the Ouija board, and they start using it, and Agatha starts talking to whoever spirit is there, and it turns out to be Mrs. Hart.
Even though everybody on the internet thought it said Mr. Shart, which was so funny. So now whenever I think about it, I'm like, oh, Mr. Shart.
Yeah. Mr. Shart.
Always a choice.
But Agatha ends up being possessed by Mrs. Hart. And and it was really great how they like made her sound a little bit like Mrs. Hart too.
Well, that was her impression of her.
Yeah. Again, great acting on Catherine's part.
But then Rio, because then Rio knows that she's faking it, and I think Jen asks maybe like, why is she doing it or something, and she says because she's scared, and that like shuts Agatha down like completely, because Rio knows. He knows that she's scared. And then she makes her sit down next to her, and then they have to do the Ouija board again.
Yep. So once they start beginning the Ouija board again, the lights start flickering, and when Agatha asks who's talking to them, they spell out death. And
then Rio laughs.
Yeah, immediately after they say it's death, and Death wants to punish Agatha, which is pretty much why she's there. But no one else knows it yet. So then Agatha lets go, which is against the rules, and more weird things start to happen. So I think it's Jen that says they need to pretty much kill Agatha to pass the trial.
Yeah.
And just out of nowhere, Agatha disappears and then reappears on the ceiling, all possessed and everything, and like that was another part that gave me chills. Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's freaky. So then, like, as she was being possessed, everyone's screaming, and she tries to kill Jen, and the lights turn on. She disappears again, and then a ghost appears, which turns out to be Agatha's mother, um, Evanora. Evanora of the Salumites. And of course, Agatha's not really pleased to see her mom there as
Nope.
a ghost.
And Rio's not pleased to see her either because she hates ghosts, which she made very clear to
Yes.
keep that in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. And like Rio starts to like pretty much defend Agatha
Mm-hmm.
against her mom. And her mom's like, you guys are all fools for joining in a coven with Agatha. Like you need to leave her behind. And Rio's like, no, it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And what her mom says to Agatha was just really cruel. I'm like, oh my god.
It's the worst thing a mother could ever say to their child.
I know. Like, she says that Agatha was born evil and that she should have killed her as soon as she left her body. Like that's just
Mm-hmm.
uh
Yep. And the actress like didn't want to say it. She's like,
oh
do we
really?
have to say this?
Oh.
Yes. But then she was perfect. She like it was just perfectly delivered.
Mm-hmm. So after that, her mother repossesses Agatha and Alice starts shooting her with her powers, and that leads to Agatha absorbing her powers, ultimately killing her. And that that was hard to watch.
Yeah, that was, I knew people were saying they're like, somebody's gonna die, somebody's gonna die. And I was just like not there with it. And then it happened, and I was like, wait, like, no, she can't actually be dead. And oh wait, the big part of that though, with the Ouija board and Teen, where he's like asking the Ouija board, like who's what, I don't forget what the question was. And then it spells out Nicholas Scratch.
Uh-huh.
And then he yells out Nicholas Scratch. The timer stops. Agatha
And
stops. She
uh-huh.
looks around and the little boy says, like, Mama, stop.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like everybody's world stopped at that moment because you've got the coven who's like dealing with the Alice situation. You've got Agatha dealing with her son.
Uh-huh.
It's just, it was
A
a lot.
lot. It was a lot. Like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
But like also like seeing the look on her face too, like when he said Nicholas Scratch
Mm-hmm.
too. That
And
was
because that was also confirming, even though we know now she already knew who Teen was. So it wasn't really in a reaction to him saying the name, but it was confirmation to us that because he could say Nicholas Scratch, that meant he wasn't Nicholas Scratch because of the sigil. But we
right.
also don't know when the sigil was actually destroyed in that order of events.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so after everything stops, the door opens, and which means the trial was over. And uh Teen is visibly upset about Alice's death, and everyone else is too, and he just blames Agatha, obviously.
Mhm.
And she's like, I mean, I'm sure part of her felt bad about
I
what
think she
happened.
did feel bad, yeah.
Yeah. And so they're like he says after they get out of the trial and back on the road, is he's like, is this what it really means to be a witch, killing people to serve your own agenda? And Agatha's like, pretty much. And Teens says that that's not who I am. It's not who I want to be. And that's when Agatha says, uh, you are so much like your mother.
Mhm. Yep. And that the whole demeanor switch again, and yeah, I mean, it's just so well done.
Mhm.
So well done. Oh my god.
Just all the cast just
They
nailed
killed.
it, like,
Oh my gosh.
throughout
Like,
this whole show.
yeah, they couldn't have been better cast.
Mhm.
Anybody. so yeah, so then
We get confirmation of who Billy or Teen really is, and
because he mind controls Jed and Lilia, throws Agatha into the mud, then he
mhm,
throws them into the mud, and he's got his blue magic.
mhm,
Hmm.
and the crown,
And we get a
which,
crown
yep, which
and some
is
Billie Eilish. I was like, okay.
all right. We see you.
Mhm.
But like that was just crazy way to end in that episode.
Yeah. And the
I
thing
loved
is,
it.
that was one of those situations where it's like I already knew he was Billy, but the way that they did the reveal was so effective that it
Yeah.
almost didn't matter that I already knew, because I didn't know how they were going to do it and
Right.
the way that they did it. And I was just sat here like shook. Like I knew it was coming, but I was just like mouth agape, like, and I think I said, "Oh shit," at the TV, because I think I was just like, just how they did it.
Mind
Yeah,
blown.
yeah.
Mhm. I was like, well then, all
It's like,
right.
okay, you're gonna make me wait a week now for the next episode. Okay, that's ew, Disney Plus.
uh and thankfully we get some background on who Billy is
Hmm.
the next episode. Uh Familiar by Thy Side. And it starts off with uh a bar mitzvah. So we find that his family is Jewish, and he at his party he goes into this palm readings tent, and it turns out to be Lilia that's there.
Hmm.
Plot twist. And so she reads, she sees his future, and she says it's a long journey lies ahead, uh, one of great transformation. Lifeline is broken in two.
Spooky.
Yeah. So it's, and he's like, what does that mean? Like, what are you talking about? And like she doesn't really want to tell him, obviously. And
Mm-mm.
he says that he doesn't want to really know everything either, because like don't want to know too much about the future,
Yeah,
which I honestly wouldn't either.
I wouldn't.
It's
I wouldn't have
given.
even walked into the tent, to be honest. I would have
True.
just right
Yeah.
past there.
Don't want to know.
Mm-mm.
Um, so after he leaves, Lilia writes that symbol on the little, I guess, a plank of wood, I guess it is.
I guess so. Yeah, I'm not really
Yeah,
sure.
whatever that is. And it's the same symbol that shows up on his mouth when he tries to say his name in earlier episodes. So we find out that Lilia is the one who put the sigil on him.
Big twist. I don't think
Yes.
anybody saw that. Like, I don't think anybody guessed that.
Mm-mm.
Because why would you?
Yeah. Like we thought that it was either Agatha or Wanda, or
Yep.
wouldn't have guessed that it was Lilia for
Nope.
sure.
At all.
So after he leaves, he ends up leaving his coat in there, and she puts the sigil wood thing in his pocket and like kind of tries to find him to give it back to him. But at that moment, the party was interrupted by the Westview anomaly that was
Oh,
happening.
wait. She couldn't remember at that point who it was. Once she finished the sigil and put it in the pocket, that's when her
Well, yeah,
brain
yeah.
wiped away who he
Yeah,
was, so
that's
that
right.
when she goes to hand out the jacket, she's like, somebody left this in my tent or whatever, and they're like, oh, who was it? And she's like, oh, I don't remember, or whatever she says. And
Mhm.
she's like, but could you just like give it to them? So
Yeah,
she was done at that point.
yeah, that's right. Um, so yeah, she, but it in the end, it ends up getting back to him somehow.
Somehow, yeah. I don't remember if we saw any of that, because yeah, like it does get interrupted immediately, and they're like, "We need to leave because Westview is like blowing up or something."
Yeah,
Yeah, which was actually interesting to me why they were like, "Everybody needs to go home," because I was kind of like, I feel like everyone should just stay like shelter in place until the thing is
yeah,
over, versus like everybody scattering.
right.
But obviously, we needed the next scene to happen.
Mhm. Yeah, which relates to the very first episode and what we were
Mm.
talking about earlier of something important that
Yes,
paid
something.
off in this episode.
Mhm.
So as they were driving back to Eastview, they ended up crashing the car into the tree as the Westview dome was disappearing and shrinking. And so Billy was knocked out and bleeding. And then we hear like all these voices. Um, uh, Pretty sure it was Wanda and Vision, like when they were saying goodnight to their Billy and Tommy. And
Mhm.
then Billy just suddenly wakes up and yells Tommy's name. And
Mhm.
so I was like, oh, okay. So that's how he becomes Billy Maximoff. It's like that it makes sense now.
It sure does. But like R.I.P. William Kaplan.
Yeah.
Whoops.
And I really feel bad for him, and like a lot for during this time, because he like is completely confused. He doesn't know who he is or why he's there, and
And
then
he's
all of a sudden
strange
he has,
before.
yeah, he has new parents and he's like so confused. And we get a little glimpse into his other powers, because he can read his parents' minds and what they're thinking, and like he's like very overwhelmed at
Yes.
that point,
Mhm.
which I'm sure anyone would be if they were in that situation.
Yes.
So, um, they they bring him back to their house, and immediately their dog doesn't recognize him, so it starts barking at him, which makes sense because he's not really Billy Kaplan anymore. He's different, uh,
Yes.
different vibes there. So he's excuses himself to his room and to rest, and he sees like his room and everything. And I love all the various like witchcraft references in there and everything. Like he has a cool room.
He's a
Let
very
me just say that.
mm-hmm.
So, and then he looks in the mirror and says his full name, like, I am William Kaplan.
Trying to make himself believe it.
Yeah. And then it flashes to 3 years later.
Yep.
And he's in the car with his boyfriend, and it's it's a really sweet moment because he read his mind, and he's like,
Yeah, I was nervous where they were gonna go with that.
uh-huh.
Like when he heard him say in his mind like that he like wanted to tell him that he loves him. And then when Billy's like, well, no, I'm gonna talk first. And I was like, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
what is he gonna say? But it was
Oh,
sweet, so sweet.
yeah.
And that he was just so honest with him about the whole situation. That he
Right.
was like, so I'm not actually William Kaplan, FYI. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a weird thing to like share.
Right.
Because people are gonna think you're like you need to be committed. So yeah.
And it was really sweet of his boyfriend that he was like, okay, so who are you if you're not William Kaplan?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like openly willing to like go on that journey with him to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who he is. I was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, even going into dark parking garages.
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so he they go back to his Billy's house, and he's already like started looking into who he could be. So he has all these documents and photos on the floor, and he figures out that it was the anomaly in Westview was a ruin which Wanda created, and that there is somebody that online um that was in Westview when all that was happening, um, turned out to be Ralph Boner, who he ends up meeting in the parking garage, the Erie
Which was
parking garage.
that was a great reveal because I didn't know who it was gonna be. I
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of like, okay, there's some random person that we're dealing with. And then I think when he said like his email address or whatever, or his username,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like bonerific69 or whatever. And
Yeah,
immediately I was like, oh my God, it's Evan Peters.
I was like,
Like that was a good surprise.
mm-hmm, it was. I was like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
but like you could clearly see how like traumatized he was, like from the
Oh,
events of
yeah.
WandaVision,
Yes, he was severely traumatized.
and
He has witch repellent.
yep. And so Billy asks him what he remembers about what happened in Westview, and he proceeds to tell him that Agatha pretty much hijacked his whole life, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Stole his house, and that ultimately she was, or he's the one who poisoned
Sparky.
Sparky.
That poor dog.
I know.
And I guess poor Ralph.
And and then he also mentioned that Wanda and Vision had kids, and no one knows what happened to them. And that's what really I think Billy was most intrigued about, obviously. And he was that really got him thinking, and he went back home to like and started doing all this research online about Agatha. So, but she came across the Salem witch trials, and I really I really loved that they put Dolly Parton in there
Because
and
she's
Jolene
Jolene.
directed.
Agatha is Jolene.
Yes.
Amazing.
I was like, "Oh my god."
I know. Amazing.
I loved that. And it said online that um that Agatha is the only witch that survived the road, which obviously we know that's, not true. Because, the road, the truth about the road was revealed later. But, in his mind, he like believed that she was the only one that could help him get to the road. And so that what that's what compels him to go to Westview to find her and like break the spell that she was under. And so, and then we kind of got this like cool like flashback, but it was definitely different from how they showed it in the first episode, because it was from his
It's
point of
from
view.
Teen's POV. Yep.
Hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah. And instead of him being brought to the police station, it was actually she interrogated him in her house. And it like that whole scene like in the first episode kind of replayed, but like a different setting. And
Yep.
I found that really cool how they did that.
Yeah, and the scene when she's interrogating him I was like, this is comedy, folks. That entire scene is wild. Like, Catherine's just going for it. And when she's like leaning over him when he's in the chair,
Uh-huh.
you could just see on his face how hard he was trying to not laugh. And I honestly felt really bad for him because Joe, it's like, you're doing a great job, buddy, but like she is just relentless and you have to just nothing.
Hmm.
And so that I can't wait. I hope that they put bloopers on the Blu-ray or 4K, whatever they have these days.
Yeah.
Because I think the bloopers are going to be amazing, honestly. Or the gag reel, whatever they call it these days.
Right.
Yeah, and especially during those scenes, but especially that scene.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
And
so,
the way she was clicking the pen and then
uh-huh.
writing like
All of it.
like lying in bed or totally lying.
That total loser or
Total loser.
or totally lying or total loser. I always mess up the order of that. But yeah, no, this is perfect. I'm done. I'm using the word perfect too many times today. I'm aware of that.
I mean, like I will say now that this show has been like exceeding my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole time it did. And it's now up there with one of the best for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I mean, I was like fully obsessed with this like
yeah.
before the show started. So
Yeah.
I'm one of those. So for me, it was kind of like it's doing everything I want it to do and more. So like, yes, it was also exceeding my expectations, but my expectations were also probably unreasonably high. Maybe not unreasonably, but like
Hmm.
to go into a new show not really knowing what they're going to be doing.
Right.
maybe unreasonably high, but high. And then when they're like doing it, and like even just when that first episode ended, and I was just like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it was like, it did not disappoint for sure.
Yeah.
So we, after that interrogation scene, they like this, and they also do the thing again where Billy says the spell to the words to break Agatha out of the spell.
Mm-hmm.
So then they flash forward to like episode 2 when Agatha asks Billy who he is, and then that ultimately means that the sigil is now broken and he's able to say, or we're able to hear who he is.
Hear, yeah.
So he says, "My name is Billy Maximoff," and well, first he says
William Kaplan.
Billy Kaplan, and then he says Billy Maximoff. So
mm-hmm.
I was like, yes, finally. And so then after that, after he says that, they go back to present day on the road again, and we see Agatha emerging from the ground because Billy sent her flying into the mud, and she sinks beneath the surface. And then we see her coming out of the ground, all covered in mud and everything.
And she looks like she's been tarred and feathered, except that she's mudded and leafed.
Yes. So she
removes the coat and she just leaves it there on the ground and she walks away. I posted on Threads that moment for me was the same as the moment in Mean Girls when Katie breaks the crown and Damien, like, that was me with her just like pulling the coat off and just leaving it. Anyway, I was like, okay.
Oh.
I'm sure it can be cleaned.
Yeah.
But she just left it there. It's fine. It's not fine.
So we see Billy crushing the sigil in his hand, and Agatha tells him, I always had a feeling that you were Billy.
No, she knew. He asked like, when did you know or whatever, and she's like, I had a feeling when we first met.
Yeah.
And then she said, you and your mother have the same tell, and he said, what's that? And she said, very
unfortunate,
very unfortunate for you.
Mm-hmm. And she was I think she said something about him not being ashamed of who he is or something like that. And
it was a whole thing about being a witch.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a nice little monologue.
Like he saw an empty vessel, and when the dome was collapsing and moved, pretty much moved his soul into William Kaplan's body. And she's like, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. It's you did what you had to do to survive. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so she asks him, like, what are you really after, since you already have power? And she's like, yeah, sort of. And it turns out that he's after Tommy, his brother. And so he says, I can sense him out there. I just don't know where he is. And so that then they proceed on the road to the next trial. And that's how it ends.
Good By episode 6.
Yeah. Home stretch. We're almost there.
Mm-hmm.
So episode 7 was definitely one of the best ones ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm pretty sure it was.
I just want to say something before we like get into this one.
Okay.
I rewatched episode 1 and 2. I don't remember, but this is in episode 3. Well, anyway, I guess I rewatched part of episode 3. And oh no, I rewatched the whole season. What am I talking about? So when I was rewatching episode 3, there's the part where Agatha's going through each person and like, you want to do this and you want to do this. And she gets to Lilia and she said, you want your fortune reversed, or you want to reverse your fortune. And when she said reverse, I like choked after watching episode 7. So let's get into episode 7.
Yeah. And again, for anyone who's watching, I probably should have said this before we started talking about this show, but spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched this.
We've spoiled the whole thing.
Yes, we are. So we find out that this is Lilia's trial, and it's I just think this whole episode was just really well written, like along with like the whole season in general, but like this one in particular was just really good writing.
It was very complicated.
Yes.
So they had to stay on the ball.
Yeah.
Somebody needed to know what was happening. So if you know what, if it's going to be anybody, I hope that it's the writers that are, the ones who know.
Yeah. But anyway, they so it starts off with them showing Lilia falling from wherever it is that she's falling from, and like that alone just I was like, okay, why is she falling? Like, what's happening? Or what's going to happen? Which I figured it was something relating to like what happens later in the episode, which turned out to be true because we'll talk about that. And like after that, it flashes to Billy asking where Rio is, and he also asked if Wanda is really dead, and Agatha's just like, yes. No, maybe.
Because she doesn't know.
Uh-huh. And I mean, ultimately, we don't know either. Like,
we don't know. But I know who does know. Rio knows. So there's that.
Yeah, that makes sense now.
Mm.
So they reach the next trial, and it looks nothing like the houses that were previously that these trials were previously done at. It's like a huge creepy like castle structure, and I'm like, oh, okay. And so they go in, and like they're dressed as different witches from pop culture, and it's I'm like, this is amazing.
And they both are stunning.
Yes. I love it.
I mean, the makeup on Joe was stunning. Like, it was just looked so good.
So natural. Yeah.
Catherine, hello. Like, again.
Perfect. And so basically the only thing in the room was the tarot card reading table, and the timer starts, so they don't have a lot of time. And so Billy proceeds to start placing the cards down on the table and trying to figure out what they mean. And like the scary part about this trial is all the swords on the ceiling hanging, just dangling there above their heads. And
It's cute. It was
so,
like, it's kind of like because he has that the poster of Saw in his room, and this to me was like relating back to that. Like, you have to play a game to not get killed. And now it's like, oh, we're playing a game and we could be like completely impaled by a sword in 0.2 seconds. So let's try to not do that.
Yeah. So as he's trying to place the cards down, the swords start falling. And I read somewhere they were actually swords.
Mm-hmm.
Like it wasn't CGI or anything. And I was like,
they had to know they had to figure out where all the swords were falling when, and then they had to get the cast in there and like map the whole thing out. Be like, you cannot be here at this point because you actually will be murdered. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not in those words, obviously.
Yeah. Like you need to be this point where
this is your mark.
Yep.
And you need to
Stay
not move from it. Thank you.
But yeah, I thought that detail was really cool that they actually did that. It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, just the practical effects that they used in the show for almost everything is just, I mean, it's like WandaVision.
Yeah.
Like, the amount of practical stuff they did, and it shows, and it's great.
I agree 100%. And I really hope that Marvel takes notes on this show and like starts using more practical effects going forward, or at least that's what I hope for.
Yeah, because it looks good and it's not as expensive.
Right.
Like, they just kept saying, this is the least expensive Marvel show. And I'm like, that to me is mind-blowing.
I mean, obviously you have to use the CGI for the power effects and everything, but
well, I mean, you don't think they're really doing that? I kid. Maybe.
But anyway, so Agatha starts to get really impatient and just starts throwing random cards on the table, and all the swords start falling still, and one of them almost impales Billy because it falls right where he's sitting. And then the whole ceiling just starts slowly dropping, which is even scarier. And so they're I'm sure at that point just trying to figure out what to do and how to stop it from happening. And then we see Lilia and Jen. They're not dead. They're underground, and they're trying to find their way back to the others. And Lilia once again starts saying random things. She has a moment, and Jen tells her that Teen / Billy is the son of the Scarlet Witch, and she knows because Lilia had just told her and forgot about it. So then we get this flashback to Lilia as a little girl. And I really loved that they gave us some background on her.
Agree.
In this episode.
Yeah.
So, and like the other woman who was talking with her and talking about her power, and then it shows her at her current age, and it basically what?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Sorry.
No.
So so then, like, having that flashback, it kind of freaks Lilia out because her powers are very complicated. Like her seeing like her past and then glimpses of into the future, her future, like a lot of different
Yeah, because
futures happening.
her time, like life hasn't been linear. Like everything, she's been bouncing around.
hmm Which I imagine is very overwhelming.
I agree.
So, and she tells Jen like the flow of time is an illusion, and she has experienced her whole life in flashes, and it's getting worse. And then she says, really feel like it's close to the end," and that is pretty sad hearing her say that,
hmm
because the end could mean a lot of different things
Right.
at that point. So, and then they get to the room with Agatha and Billy, and again their costumes are spot on too. They're dressed as Glinda and the evil witch or evil queen.
The evil
So
queen in hag form.
yes. So I'm like, just spot on. And then it's that moment where Lilia remembers who Billy is and starts like yelling at him, like,
hmm
um, and at the same time, we still continue to see these flashes to talking with the other witch, and she's like, this is the trial that I'm meant to do, and I actually know what I'm doing. So she starts the reading, and like the way that they did this sequence was just
Chilling. It was chilling.
yes.
When I was watching it again the other day, I was just like full body chills. I had full body chills, like so she's going through the whole thing, and then when she starts revealing each witch as each card,
hmm
like full body chills. Like just the way that they showed the imagery, like in the episode,
hmm
like compared like to the card to the actual like image of it happening. I just was like, my body is gonna
Wow,
explode.
wow,
Yeah.
it's just mm. So so yeah, she starts off the reading with Billy being the traveler, and she says he's the magician, and the thing that's missing is the reunion with Tommy. And then when she gets to Path Behind, um, it kind of goes off to a different scene, and she realizes that she came onto the road to get her power back, but also to remember. Um, so during that time where they were walking uh, underground, the Salem Seven catches up with them, and they almost get caught. They have a choice between the path to the next trial and then the path to escape the road, and they both choose the path towards the trial. So then we get to that sequence where she is the traveler herself, and this this whole sequence is like you said, it was very chilling in the way that she was like revealing all the witches in the coven, and she said she's the traveler, the Queen of Cups. What's missing is Three of Pentacles, and that's collaboration, community, singular voices waiting to harmonize, which means the coven itself. And so she wanted to be in the coven, but even though she said that she didn't at first.
Yeah.
She wanted a sense of like community and wanting to belong. So the path behind the Knight of Wands would relating to Alice, who fights bravely, full of fire. Path ahead, High Priestess, relating to Jen. Obstacles, Three of Swords, Agatha, which is heartbreak, grief, and sorrow. And then the Windfall, Tower reversed, which is disaster, destruction, sudden upheaval, but reversed. Miraculous transformation. And I'm pretty sure that, like, the image on the card, it relates to Multiverse of Madness. Like, like correct me if I'm wrong.
Know. I had just heard that because there's like two people falling from the tower or something, and people were like, "Oh, is that Tommy and Billy?"
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I don't think.
Okay. And then when she says destination, we see Lilia and Jen fall beneath the surface. And Lilia sees the dark hooded figure and figures out that Rio is actually Death.
Surprise.
Yeah. But not really a surprise because she kind of told everyone who she was. But
she did.
So, and I like how she said, in the end, all roads lead to me. I was like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
So, as she places that last card down, the ceiling stops and goes back up, and trial's over. And then she tells everyone that Rio is the original Green Witch, or Death. And she decides to stay behind, unfortunately, and accept her fate.
And
so
kill the Salem 7.
Yeah, and the Salem 7 find her, and she locks herself in the room with them, and gravity just kind of flips. And yeah, and all them fall to their deaths on all the swords pointing out of the ceiling. So, and then ultimately,
no, continue. Sorry.
Okay. And then ultimately, she does the same. She falls and ends up dying. So,
but before that happens, she says, "I loved being a witch."
Yes,
and like dagger in the heart.
Oh,
I'm like getting upset thinking about it.
And I like how she said all the things to each of them as they left the trial. She's like, as soon as she says coward, hit
the deck.
Like, hit the deck. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, that's basically how it ends.
So then it goes, there's a little scene at the end where she is now young again.
Yes.
He goes to the maestra and they continue their lessons, I guess.
Yep. And it's the credits, the song that they used in the credits was a song that I recognized, and I'm sure a lot of
Mhm.
people other recognized it. It was used in the Quicksilver scene in X-Men Days of Future Past when he's running around the, I guess it was a kitchen or a cafeteria or something, um, like rearranging all the cops that were trying to shoot at them.
Oh, interesting.
So I was like, oh, I recognize that song.
Hmm.
So that leads us into episode 8.
Yep. The episode of episodes.
Follow me, my friend, to glory at the end.
I actually did take some notes on this one today. What did I say?
I'm like, oh my goodness. Again, this was another episode where a lot happened.
Oh yeah, like a lot.
Like, I
This
remember
actually,
watching it.
this is the last episode, I think, of the like 4 different exchanges between Billy and Agatha about lying. Unless I'm missing some somewhere, which I could be, but they're the ones I noticed. But we can
Yeah,
get.
yeah. So this episode opens at first I didn't really understand what was happening. But it opens with we see Alice lying on the floor with, or at the trial with, where they were, episode the episode that where she dies.
Mhm.
And Death shows up and she's like, it's time to go. And she's, and like the heartbreaking part of this is she's like, I'm this should be the beginning. It shouldn't be the end.
It says like this
Like,
is all the time I get or something like that.
mm-hmm. And Death says, you're a protection witch and you died protecting someone.
She did.
Yeah. So she goes with Death, and then it just cuts to Jen like banging on the door, yelling Lilia's name, like very, very upset. And Billy's like, she chose to stay behind. It was her choice. And so and and then we get this interesting chat between Agatha and Rio, or Death, and she like Death calls out Agatha on how much she cares about Billy, and Rio, or Death, says Agatha has received special treatment, and Agatha is like really like upset that she said that. She was like, "You call what you did special treatment?"
You just took. I didn't get anything.
Uh-huh. And she was like, she asked Agatha, "Why do you let people believe what you did to what happened with Nikki? Like, why do you let them believe that?" And she was like, "Because the truth is just too awful." And really, it is awful. what really happens, which we find out in the season finale. But so they make a deal to for Rio to take him, even though she can't, but Billy has to be willing to turn himself in. And
I wrote down what they said.
Okay.
She says, if I deliver Billy, you let me go. And then she said, you will eventually die, Agatha. And then Agatha says, but I want you to stop pursuing me. I want you to stop making my life hell. And when I die a long, she says long like 17 times, time from now, I don't want to see your face. And then Rio pauses for a very long time, and then she agrees, and then they show Agatha's face. And in that moment, I'm like, Agatha did not think that she was going to say yes, that she was going to agree to it. And I think she wanted her to agree to it, but I think she also didn't want her to agree with it. Like, I feel like she's like in that very like torn place because she loves her.
Yeah.
But she also does want to be left alone. So yeah, like that whole moment is there's just like a lot happening in that moment.
Yeah. And like Death also says that what Billy's doing on the road is a violation to the natural order of things, and it's like basically disrupting everything, like
the balance,
which it kind of makes sense now, like after seeing like what really happened and what, after of course watching it a few times. So then after agreeing, she walks away and just takes out her knife and just,
I literally was like, that is so cool when she did that. Like, very Truman Show. Like, it was great.
I was like, okay, so.
Because she even, earlier in that scene, she says to Agatha, like, you're walking down the road with that other woman's son on a road that doesn't even, and then she, like, cuts her off or whatever, and she stops speaking. And it's like she was going to say on a road that doesn't even exist. But obviously they couldn't say that yet. But it's just like, oof.
But yeah, like the way that she did that was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so after she does that, Jen and Billy get back with Agatha, and they continue on their way to the next trial. And Agatha just out of nowhere just falls on the ground and trips over their shoes, and they realize that the road is actually a circle. And Agatha's like what? This is the end. Like, what?
Like, I must have missed the last trial.
And then Billy started to say something, and she's like, if you don't know, be quiet.
Oh, she starts yelling at him.
Yeah.
Actually yelling at him.
Yeah. And she's like, we'll just go again. And
Jen was like, no.
Absolutely I wouldn't want to go through that either.
No.
Not again. So then Billy forgot what he said, but he's like, if the road isn't real, then screw the road. And
we took our shoes off to respect the road, screw the road. And so then he puts his shoes on.
And next trial begin. They wake up in like a body bag in the morgue, And
and when Jen is freaking out and Billy like jumps out to go help her and Agatha's like stops him and says, "Don't steal her struggle," I cackled so loud. It was so funny that like the juxtaposition of her being so like calm and like don't help her, and Jen like flailing, freaking out. Like that's it.
classic Agatha.
A classic.
So once they realize where they are, the lights on the ceiling like start flickering and start turning off one by one, which means the trial has begun. And Agatha's like says to Jen like what version of this is you, because you're very quiet right now, like normally you're like freaking out or
complaining
or like yeah complaining. And she's like I'm thinking I'm trying to figure out what to do, how to save you guys, because I'm like she felt bad that she couldn't save Lilia. She didn't even try to save Alice, she said. And so she's like, I'm not gonna let anything happen to you guys.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what the line was, but she definitely called them 2 idiots.
Yeah. So and she's like, are we supposed they figured out they're supposed to grow something in this room, because she realized that the lights were growing lights. And they were like, Agatha said, like, how are we supposed to grow something if there's no water or soil? And
which, I mean, she's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a room with a bunch of lights and like a stairs to a door that wasn't open yet. But so then they start talking about Jen being bound and like her not needing her magic to, like, her not needing her powers to save everybody. And Billy's like, maybe you didn't need him. And then she was like, I was bound for like 100 years. Did I just waste like a century of my life? And and she figures out that Agatha was actually the one who bound her for 100 years. And
she didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, she unknowingly did it to her.
Oh, well.
And she was like, for 100 years.
It's a long time. I mean, it could have been longer if she didn't figure it out.
Yeah. So then Jen
rips her hair out of her head.
Yeah.
Very rude, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And does the unbinding spell.
Mm-hmm. Unbinding ritual to get her power back. And I gotta say, like, when she does in that moment, like, that was just really, well, first of all, really well acted. That moment.
Oh yeah, that episode 8, I was like, Sashir Zameda is giving the performance of her life in this episode. Like,
yes, very well done. And like that moment where she like feels her powers back, and like that was just really heartwarming to see. And she finally got what she needed from the road, and she disappears. So then it's left with they're left Billy and Agatha in the room alone, and she's like, we need to end this now. And she helps Billy pretty much find a body for Tommy's soul to go into. And like while they were doing that, it was, again, chills. Chills.
It was a lot. And then
And
that's why, and then he says, am I killing this boy to save my, or whatever that line is, to save my
mhm.
brother or to save Tommy or whatever. And then he disappears and she says, like, no, Billy, sometimes boys die. And I'm just like beside myself. I'm like getting upset thinking about it.
Oh,
Like watching it again today on the train, I literally like I had tears like coming down my face. I was like, I hope people are not like looking at me, and it's like New Jersey Transit, so people aren't like looking at you. They don't care. But it was just
ugh, just
devastating.
really sad,
Yeah.
really.
And it's heartbreaking to like watch her say that, knowing that she's like always thinking about it.
Uh-huh. And and like the brooch, it is kind of a constant reminder of what happened too to her, but it means so much to her at the same
Mhm.
time.
And his hair,
Mhm.
like, yeah.
So, at that point, it's just her in the room alone, and the timer's still continuing to wind down, and she opens up the brooch and finds his hair in there, but she also finds, like, a seed. So and, um, the like, after Billy disappears, the what or
The
was it
floor cracked open.
before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
During that whole
befo
exchange, the floor cracked open.
yes, yes. So, so there was soil underneath of it, so she realized she needed to plant that seed with, she used her tear to water it, which, again, sad. And, she plants it, and
And then she's
so, like,
yelling
her
more time
yeah, that
because the
was
lights are going out.
mhm, and she's like, "I need more time, I need more time," and again, that was just really tense and heartbreaking at the same time, and then all of a sudden it just the flower sprouts and grows, and um the the trial completed, and um and just out of nowhere the ceiling just like caves in
Caving in, yeah.
almost on top of her, and she goes out the door, and death is waiting for her outside on top of her house, and like I gotta say, Aubrey Plaza just nailed this role to the T.
Mhm.
Like, and like her like even her laugh was just like
She was having the
amazing.
time of her life.
Really,
Like,
literally.
time of her life.
And Agatha's like tried to use her powers, and she was like, "Where's my prize?"
Yeah.
And so she was like, Agatha or Rio's like she wants Agatha to come with her because she's like, "Where's Billy?
Mhm.
Like you were supposed to deliver him to me." And so she was like, you're coming with me now." And just she's like, "Death by a thousand cuts," which oh
It was
that
a
was
long,
painful to watch.
that must have been a long time in a makeup chair.
Yes. And another another heartwarming thing that I saw during this episode was she actually using the spells that Alice and Jen like used, because she learned those from them
Right.
in the previous episodes. I was like, oh, so she was actually listening to them and learning. So just she used those to try to protect herself from what Death was doing. And then came the moment where um Death called her a coward, and she hit
Hit
the
the deck.
deck. Um, but it didn't really do much because ultimately she ended up tying Agatha up with like vines or something.
Mhm.
And then out of nowhere, Billy shows up.
Sure does. The snazzy new suit and his blue magic.
Uh-huh. So like seeing him in that costume just really made me happy because it it really looks like the costume in the comics
Mm-hmm.
that I've seen. I was like, yes. So then Billy says to Agatha, don't take it all. So
Because
he
that is referring to the conversation they had earlier, which also refers back to my other thing, but
Mhm.
this was like the final moment. It was their final back and forth about this when she had asked him earlier, like to juice her up. And
Mhm.
he said, "You'll take all my power." And she said, "I wouldn't." And he called her a liar. And she said, "I
Yeah.
won't." And he said, "Liar."
Mhm.
And so obviously it didn't happen at that point. But now we're at this point and he's willing to help her.
Yeah.
And he was scared that she was going to take it all. And
Mhm.
she didn't lie.
Yeah. Thankfully she didn't lie because I was like in the back of my mind I was thinking there was a possibility that she would take it all, but
Oh,
like no.
that boy was not dying in this TV show. They got too many plans for him. Mm-mm. I wasn't nervous
And
about him. Other people, yes. Him, no. But so as we're getting to this part where now she is back in this hero costume situation, where was the brooch? Because the brooch was not there. But then the brooch shows up again later. So I need to find out where the brooch was during this battle scene.
yeah.
Because she had the necklace on right before, and
Mhm.
then the brooches, and then it's gone, and then later he finds it in the ground. So
Yeah. That's true.
it's a question.
It's a very good point.
Mm.
Um so yeah, so
Rio and Agatha
then
fight,
yes, they fight.
and
Back
Rio
and forth.
takes Billy into the greenhouse shed building, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then
And
and then Rio says, "Power looks good on you." And then she said, "Honey, everything looks good on me." I said, "Yes."
yeah. So I'm sure you may know, but is the costume that Agatha got back after Billy um like
Juices
fired
her
at her, is it the same costume as
It,
before?
it's the same costume. I don't know if it's exactly the same physical garment or if they made a new one, but it's the same costume. Yeah.
Okay,
But
okay.
except that she has blue fingertip nails. She has blue nails. She doesn't
Yeah,
have like the dark hold black fingers anymore. And
that's
she's got
true.
that like, red lipstick on. I think it was red. And her hair is
Mhm.
definitely more
Yeah.
not as it's more that. But
Yes,
the
it's
actual
more
it's
normal looking.
yes, it's less like crazy old lady looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just the makeup in general is different as far
Mhm.
as I'm thinking in my head. But yes, the costume's the same.
Got it. So then Agatha tells Billy like this is uh this is futile, like this like
Mhm.
both of us aren't going to make it out of this,
Yeah,
so it should be her. And she's like we can't fight death.
try.
So Billy offers himself up to death, and Agatha she's like yeah, just take him. He he's willing to go with you. and starts to walk away, and Billy's like telepathically communicating with her. It's like, I know you can hear me. Is this what really happened to Nikki or your son? And she just kind of stops in her tracks and like turns around, and so and she basically kisses her, kisses death, and accepts it,
Kiss of death.
and dies.
Sure does. The way that I sat there and just stared at my television, like, because I had a feeling that she might die. And I had posted about it. And people were like, if she dies, she's coming back as a ghost. And I was like, I'm glad you guys are really confident about that. And I was just like, I didn't know how to react. I felt numb, honestly. I felt numb. And like, yeah, okay, she turns into like a beautiful flower situation.
Garden.
But I was
Yeah.
like, I was numb. And I was like, at this point, they better be bringing her back as a ghost or I'm going to start throwing things. I'm not a violent person, but I was going to start throwing things. So anyway, so then he picks up the brooch off the ground.
Yeah. Somehow it ended up on the ground.
Where did that come from? So I don't know. But
yeah. Like, I was like, I mean, I was kind of hoping for the same thing, honestly, for her to come back as a ghost.
mm-hmm.
But again, I wasn't sure because they haven't really said anything about her, like, being in, or have they?
Oh, yeah.
Being in.
Yeah, all we know is about What If season 3, but obviously that doesn't pertain to like the current like timeline of the MCU.
Yeah.
So yeah. So but obviously they weren't gonna say anything because they're not gonna like confirm or deny that somebody is alive or making it out alive.
Yeah. So I really liked the parallel that they showed with Billy and Wanda, as he was walking away and putting the hood up, and like I really liked seeing that parallel with them as he was leaving and returning home. And apparently, like throughout the course of this whole show, it was 24 hours that he was away because, like, his parents.
In the interview, Jack said that they were trying to figure out how long it should be, and they're like, we want the parents to be worried, but we don't want them to be calling the police. So that's kind of how they landed on the 24 hours.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then we get to him actually like figuring out that he in fact created the road, which in reality it makes sense because he's the magician and he has great power. He has the power to create the road. And
I think that's the tell. Him having the same tell as his mother. And so there was a part earlier in the episode when he and Agatha are at the trial and they're talking about how he, like, when they're like, let's basically find Tommy a body, and he was saying, he said, I don't know how I did it, in regards to him like reincarnating himself in William Kaplan's body. And Agatha says, you never do, because he has no idea how he created the road. At that point, he didn't even know he did create the road. So I thought that was
it was really brilliant how they revealed that and how they like wrote that.
Mm-hmm.
So then after he realizes that he created the road, he heard just laughing in the background, and he turns around and just is scared of something, but ultimately
And
we
she
don't.
says, "Boo."
Yeah, she's Boo, and it freaks him out, but we
It
don't
was
see
like,
that until
well, yeah, in that moment. So I watched with the captions on, and it said like disembodied voice cackles or something like that.
oh.
And I was like, but it's like, as soon as I heard her, I feel like I probably like exhaled the breath that I had been holding since she died,
Hmm.
because I was like, oh, thank God. Like
Yeah,
I just wanted to know that she was still going to be there.
right. I get
So,
that.
yeah.
All right. So, season finale.
Yeah.
Maiden Mother Crone. And it's really ironic that that pretty much tells Agatha's story in a way.
Yep.
Um, so it starts off in the year 1750 with Agatha in distress, pregnant and in labor in the middle of the forest, which um like you could obviously tell that she was in a lot of pain and like pretty scared at that moment, which I would be too. And she becomes even more scared when she sees death appear. She's like, immediately, she's like, no, no, just no.
Hmm. And so Death says she can give her time, but that's all.
Yeah, that's literally all she says, and just disappears. And
Because Agatha asks how much time.
mhm,
And by the time she like gets through her contraction or whatever and looks back at her, she's gone.
yeah,
So she never gets an answer.
mhm. So honestly, it's really sad that she had to live like every day in limbo, like not knowing like how much time she would have with her son.
Yeah. But she was doing what she thought she needed to do to keep Death at bay, which she
Yeah.
was doing consistently
Hmm.
until Nikki decided otherwise.
Yeah. So she proceeded to do that for 6 years, which
Mm-hmm.
um and another thing that I didn't notice until after that the bell that he steals is the same bell that she used in the first episode to
Yep. Yeah, I
or
think
the
people
second.
had to literally pause that to see it because it
Hmm.
happens so quick that I'm like, there's no way you would just know that just from watching the episode. Like you had to
Hmm.
pause it to see what he was taking.
Yeah.
And somebody did.
Yeah.
But so the episode, okay, so wait. So I wrote down a few things for this.
Hmm. Go ahead.
Um so he asks her one time, why do you kill witches? And she says to survive. And then he's like, well, why can't we just live amongst them and survive with them? And she's like, because then they would kill us, and the whole thing.
Hmm.
And she tells him all the things she can do with her power, that he calls it her purple. And so then that's why she calls it her purple. Like he says, like, you're purple, and she's like, my
Uh-huh.
what? And then she calls it her purple, and I was like,
Oh
I
no.
am going to just cry here now forever. And so she like lists off all the things that she can do with it, but like she tells him like she can't heal him and she can't protect him from what's coming.
Hmm.
And then there's the whole thing with Death, obviously. And so there's a lot of talk about this one scene where he's singing in that pub, and um the one young woman comes over and says like, come home and look like with me and we'll give you a hot meal, blah blah blah. And he turns her down, and he's coughing at that point, and he turns her
Yeah.
down and he says like, I can't, my mother needs me home. And then Agatha looked like really surprised, and there's a lot of discourse kind of going on about that, saying like, people are asking like, okay, did Nikki know Rio? Like, was she in the picture while he was a child and like he wasn't scared of her, he knew her?
Mhm.
Um, and was she mother versus Agatha being like mama? And when he's saying like, my mother needs me home, was he talking about death needs him home? Or was he just lying and saying like, my mom needs me to go home, like I'm not eating your
Yeah.
meal? And if that's the case, I mean, if either one is the case, that's telling me like he's accepted death at that point, because it's like he needs food, he's coughing, like
Yeah.
um he's not letting this like siphoning of power and her killing the witches happen. So like he's kind of made his own decision.
Yeah.
Um so so obviously then that happens, and then Agatha, so okay, so then I'm sorry, I'm like taking over this from you, but
No, no, you're good.
when Rio comes at night and like she gets his attention and she waves to him and like tells him to come, and like she doesn't have like her scary death thing on, you would think that he wouldn't just get up in the middle of the night and run over to a stranger. Like you would think
Right.
if he saw somebody spooky, he would wake up his mom and be like,
Right.
there's somebody spooky here. So like that's kind
Mhm.
of giving like he knows her. And then she tells him to go say goodbye to Agatha, and then like he gives her
Mhm.
the kisses on the cheek and then like
Mhm.
leaves, and it's like watching them walk away together is like devastating. But she does everything with him so gently, because you know that she she loves Agatha and Agatha loves him, and who knows if she loves him, because again we don't know if they have a relationship, but maybe she just loves him because Agatha loves him, who knows.
Yeah.
um and it's just like devastating to watch. And then in the morning when Agatha wakes up and realizes that he's dead, and she begs for more time again. So it's like she's always begging for more time. That's just like this thing that she does, I guess.
Yeah.
um and I have something to say, but later. So
Yeah.
I'm done with that portion.
You're fine. I mean, what you said does make sense. Like like you said, if I mean, if I were to wake up in the middle of the forest at night and see some random person standing there, I would be freaked out.
Right.
So the fact that he didn't freak out was is a big question. Um, like if they had some sort of like relationship or bond or something.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Agatha and her were lovers, so they were together. So it,
Like we just don't know. We don't
yeah,
we don't know. People were speculating maybe Rio's always kind of been around at night and like would come and like meet him and whatever, and they would play or something, because people were like, if Agatha knew about it, she like wouldn't have death being around Nikki. Like she
mhm,
already knows that she's coming for him at some point. So there's just like a lot of speculation about like yes, no, and maybe hopefully one day we will find out, but who
hopefully.
knows? I don't know.
See, we have a comment here. Um,
Oh yeah, same. Like I would watch an entire season of that. I would watch multiple seasons of that. It's just like, how do we get them to make that? I know Jack did
yeah,
say like a lot of the unexplored things would is like questions for another time, or answers for another time, to be addressed at another time. So
mhm,
hopefully they do, because I don't think that she realized how much people would want the backstory between like Rio and Agatha and just her like just being younger in the Salem days and stuff. Because people really loved that scene in WandaVision too. Like that whole backstory. It's like you want backstory on these characters that you're seeing, especially villains, because you want to see how they became that way. So
And one thing that I've always thought about Agatha is that I think she's just really overlooked and underrated. And like, obviously, not a lot of people knew anything about her before WandaVision. So we just need more. We need more backstory.
Agree. We need so much more Agatha. Like, I'll start a petition.
So so then, like, after Agatha wakes up and realizes that Nikki's dead, she buries his body while singing his version of the ballad that they wrote together, and
it's like devastating. Because when
heart.
it says the lyric of "If one be gone, we carry on," that like now just means an entirely different thing from what it was like while I was watching the show. Because they were Coven too, and it was just like now one of those two is gone, and now she has to carry on, and I'm just like, just stab me in the heart again, please, thank you.
Yeah. And that kind of calls back to when Jen was questioning the lyrics about the ballad being Coven too, and
she's like,
she was like, I'm pretty sure it is Coven too.
Yeah, she says it is if you're a student of the ballad. Yeah.
So as she's singing the ballad, that's when she places the strand of Nikki's hair in the brooch and keeps it with her. And as she's doing that, another young witch comes across Agatha as she's singing the song and asks about the road and the ballad. And I'm pretty sure that's when Agatha comes up with the plan to steal
the power,
to con other witches into getting their powers. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, the long con.
And
she couldn't have planned that better if she tried. Because she didn't.
No. But yeah, then it shows her throughout the centuries doing what she has done for a long time, stealing.
Oh no, you left. Well, she was stealing witches' powers while wearing like 17 costumes. So let's clap it up for costume design. We lost Gabby. Come back. I can't see if anybody has any questions. If anybody's asking any questions, to answer any questions. We've lost her.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I had a whole conversation. Is everything okay?
Yeah, I have no idea what just happened. I think my internet.
It was a witch.
Yes.
But yeah, so I was just continuing. We were saying that she was stealing the powers, and then I said that she did it in like basically she did it in the amount of costumes that one person might wear in an entire season of television. She wore in the one episode. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Which all were pretty great costumes, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, they were.
Like, are you planning on doing all of them?
I can't do all of it. I mean, I was like, well, if she's like never in anything else ever, I'm sure at some point I can get through all of them. But right now, I'm like, I'm still backed up from the first half of the season. Like, um, getting through all these. I mean, I do have favorites that I'm putting towards the top or at the top of the list from the episode, but all
Cool.
of them is like, that's a big
Yeah.
endeavor.
Yeah. Um. So anyway, kind of lost my train of thought.
She was doing the con. She was stealing, going through the decades, stealing all the power
Yeah.
from all the witches until we get back to now present day, where she is in her basement with our coven, and we get to see the perspective of her now us knowing that Billy was the one who created the road, and her realizing it.
Yeah.
Which was amazing.
Yeah, just the realization on her face, just
I know. And then the look, there were two looks into the camera. There was one like as he's coming down the stairs where she like did like a quick into the camera, and then the one at the end. And I was just like,
so good. And so after that scene, they cut to Billy's room when at the end of the last episode 8, and we finally see her appear.
And I shrieked.
Honestly, I did too.
I was like, what is that? I lost my mind. I was just like screaming in my apartment. It's terrible.
I was excited, just not just to see her as a ghost, but the gray hair, like
the gray hair, which
oh
I'm
God.
glad that they kept long. I'm glad they kept it long and flowing because that's my girl.
Yeah.
But the costume,
oh my God.
I was like, well, I need to make that immediately. Like, what is happening? I was like, that is stunning. It is gorgeous. It is beautiful. I hope I can do it justice. Like, I'm just like, and then she's just standing there, and I'm just like, what is that? And then today when I was rewatching it, I was just like looking more at like her makeup and like the colors that they're using, which is like hard to see because it's ghostly.
Yeah.
And then the nail polish they have on her, and just like
oh my God. Oh man.
You could tell they're definitely being influenced by the comic book outfit.
Oh yeah.
So.
And also her look, obviously, with the gray hair, because that's how she's depicted in the comics originally. So, like as a comic book reader, I was like, so Billy's all like, not surprisingly,
terrified.
Yeah, he's like, I saw you die. What is happening?
It's like, Billy, you've seen a lot of weird things. You don't think that was like the least?
Right. So she straight up tells him like that I did not sacrifice myself. That was a calculated risk that I took, and it paid off.
Sure did.
And she also reconfirms that he created the road and that the ballad was the trick to get power for herself, really. And but the sad part was Billy blames himself for creating the road because of the fact that Sharon, Lilia, and Alice ended up dying because he created it in the first place.
Right. And from that, she says to him, if you want to be a witch, get used to this feeling, which he didn't want to get used to that feeling. But it parallels what she said to Nikki earlier in the episode about when she's killing all the witches. And she says, if you want to survive, get used to this feeling. And I'm just like, okay.
And he tells her that he will never get used to it. And she's like, we'll see. So hard to say what that means, but
we'll see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it, honestly. Whatever happens. Then she also says that you did save one person, though, and that was Jen, which we see her emerge from the ground outside of Westview and just kind of fly away with her
I'm
with her
so
powers.
happy she like made it through.
Yeah, me too. So Billy ends up going back to Agatha's basement and where the door is to the road. And I love how Agatha just kind of appears there, just like
oh yeah, and I was like,
and
if somebody thinks I'm not recreating that shot, they're mistaken. I was like, my dad has a washer dryer set up like that, so I'm just gonna,
yeah,
I'm just gonna pop over there and be like, photo shoot real quick, like.
Yes. So anyway, he draws a circle with a star in it above the on the door, and she's like, "Oh, are you just doing analog magic or not?"
And then
It's
she's
real.
like, oh, or not when the candles start lighting.
Uh-huh. And so then Billy pulls out her brooch and starts casting this banishment spell.
Right, and this is after she's been begging him just to give it back to her. She's like, I know you have what I want, and just give it to me and I'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
No.
He's like, nope. I'm banishing you and to be with Rio or wherever you belong.
Yeah, he's like, I don't care.
Yeah. And she's like, no, you can't do this. Like, you're not going to do this. And he just keeps saying it like over and over and over again. And she starts to realize that he actually can do it. And she, like, you start seeing her like kind of like fade away slowly. And she's like trying to grab the brooch out of his hand. And then she actually does manage to smack it out of his hand.
Well, he says something to her, like, I don't remember if he asks like why she doesn't want to go, whatever it is, and she says because I can't face him. And at that moment, she's able to knock the thing out of his hand, which devastating.
Yeah. And but she's actually able to pick it up though. That's the thing.
Yeah. Well, it's like the just being able to touch it, like the fact that she was able to hit it out of his hand and then pick it up. It's just like that's like her getting that power. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure she'll be able to do more soon.
Hopefully. Or maybe even get like a body back, maybe like become like I don't
Yeah,
know.
I did
It's
see people talking about that, but I was like, look, my only issue with that is though, if it's a different body, then it's no longer Catherine Hahn, and then what happens?
true.
Because I don't want that.
Yeah. No.
Mm.
She 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 is Agatha, like no one else can
Mhm.
be Agatha.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that is true. Um and so how it ends is Billy seals the door to the road and it has like kind of like a memorial on it with Alice, Sharon Davis, and Lilia, their names on it. And the door to her basement opens and she's like, let's go find Tommy, and that's how it ends. So I'm really excited to what they're gonna do with these characters.
So am I.
Uh,
I'm very excited, especially because like nothing's been announced. So it's like unless they're gonna pop up in like, you know, an end credit scene of an upcoming movie, like the Fantastic Four. I
yeah.
keep freezing, like the Fantastic Four, or you know that because that would be appropriate.
Uh-huh.
Like who knows? Because they've announced nothing, and I'm
I
just like,
know.
wait a second though, because if they don't show up in an end credit scene somewhere, we're not gonna see them again for a while. But people were saying that they could be involved in like the Doctor Doom stuff, but
Maybe. Yeah.
at this point, like I like because they have like a task that they're going to do,
Hmm.
it would almost make more sense like if the Scarlet Witch movie is a real thing, that like that would be the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just hoping that we find out something soon
Oh,
because
boy.
like it's another like 3 or 4 years, I'm gonna like lose my mind.
I know. Like just all that Marvel has planned, excuse me, for the future. Like with like Fantastic Four, like Agatha played a role in their comics for a long time,
Yeah,
being the nanny of for them for their son.
right.
So
That's what
like
I'm
there's a chance
saying.
she could show up in that. She could show up with, like you said, with the Doom stuff, Doomsday, and I was thinking maybe she could show up in Vision Quest,
I
that
mean,
show.
that would make the most sense.
Yeah.
But like I don't even know what that one's about, but the fact that it's like part of the trilogy of the three
Mhm.
shows, and like Vision is obviously like Billy and Tommy's father,
Hmm.
so maybe. And like that
Yeah.
would be great because that would
Yeah.
be soon.
Uh-huh.
But
Or even like what Brian says, the Young Avengers stuff, like because
that's true.
he's part of the Young Avengers, and like there's, even though I haven't officially announced Young Avengers being a thing, but it's
Like you
very
know,
possible. Yeah.
there's too many characters from it that they've brought into the MCU that like it wouldn't make sense to just kind of ignore it.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh man. So, any other thoughts or anything?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. There's just so much. There's so much. I can't wait to just keep rewatching it. So what I want to do now is like rewatch the whole thing from the beginning and
Hmm.
then go back and rewatch WandaVision
Hmm.
and then like rewatch this again. Because I'm sure there's just so many little things that it's just like they're not, you don't pick up on them when you watch it one time, two times, three times, whatever. But it's like
Yeah.
now knowing the secrets and then rewatching everything, and like now knowing like the relationship between Agatha and Billy, like rewatching them in WandaVision together, and
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm due for another WandaVision rewatch too, because it's been one of my favorite shows since Endgame. And like after watching this show, it makes me want to go back and rewatch WandaVision now. So
Yeah, no, I get that.
oh well, I had a great time talking about this with you.
Me too. With
It was
you.
yeah, of course. I'm glad that you were able to join me for it.
Yeah, and thanks for inviting me.
Of course. I mean, I know how much Agatha as a character means to you, so it was my pleasure.
I appreciate that. They're on my shirt.
That's really cool.
Where is it? Oh, she's so
Where'd you get that?
Hot Topic.
Oh,
I ordered 4 sweatshirts, but one of them they messed it up. Like the printing is like off, so I have to like send them a photo and be like, "Hi, can you replace this?"
oh.
It's like the Agatha. It says like Agatha on the top, and like it's like double printed, and it's just like off, so it looks blurry when you look at it. And it's
Okay.
be blurry, but I'll deal with it. But yeah, no, I have a lot of shirts from Hot Topic. If you go on the Hot Topic website, they have so much stuff, and then on Box Lunch they have a shirt that's not available at Hot Topic, but they have a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Like I really could spend a lot of money at both of those places.
Yes, and I have. So I keep getting hot cash. They're like, "You have hot cash." I'm like, I can't imagine why. Just keep buying.
All right. Well, again, thanks for joining me for this, and thank you for everyone who hung out with us and watched.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. But for now, we will say goodbye and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.